Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me make sure my volume and speaker and everything else. Yeah, everything's good. So first, I'm going to say Merry Christmas, everyone. And crap, my setup is not completely right. So I've had weirdness with my setup recently because my loving wife, brought my dog in and he destroyed my television. And because my big dog destroyed my television, I don't have a television to my left anymore. So I'm going to make sure I am up. I'm seeing green all over the place, so I'm going to, yes, I'm good. So guys, I wanted to have a conversation about Cenk Uygur and Cal Kalinske leaving Justice Democrats. Yeah, and by the way, Cal did leave. Cal also resigned. In case those who don't know, yesterday I released this kind of, well, this bombshell revelation that Cenk Uygur was stepping down from Justice Democrats because of blog posts that he wrote 18 years ago. The blog posts were considered to be sexist. Some were considered to be somewhat racist. And Cenk Uygur came out. He said, yes, I wrote this 18 years ago. I wrote this during the time in which I was conservative. I thought this stuff was edgy. I look at it now. I'm appalled by it. And yes, I'm stepping down and resigning. That was the crux of his explanation of what took place. I saw a video yesterday where Cal stepped down. He himself resigned. Dave Kohler was also part of the group that resigned. Dave Kohler was one of the founders of TYT, if I'm not mistaken, also. So the elements that were associated with TYT, that were associated with Justice Democrats, have resigned, particularly the principals. Yesterday was me just giving the story. Today I want to give my opinion of the story. Meaning, I explained what took place. I explained the allegations themselves. I even went through the tweets themselves. So I'll say, look at that particular video for more detail. But I didn't necessarily give a judgment. Like, I didn't necessarily give what I thought about the whole thing. It was more of the line of, holy shit, I can't believe he's stepping down from Justice Democrats. It was more of a, this is the story as the story has come up. I want to talk about the story itself, and I want to talk about a wider context to the story. Because I started to think about it a little bit more, and I started to have, my thoughts crystallize around a particular point. First, let me put my biases on the table. So, when Sanders was running, at some point I came along with this kind of character arc of my own, where I was kind of out of not paying attention to politics, voted for Nader, so that gave you my perspective of where I was, without necessarily being actualized from thinking about this stuff. When I became more, what do you say, I guess aware, TYT was one of the networks that pulled me into it. Cenk was a person I probably liked the most when I watched that show. The others didn't particularly like. Then Jimmy Dore, I ended up liking Dore. Ended up liking Jordan. Ended up liking, I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, so that was the basis of how that started. Even now, I still like TYT politics, and I like Jimmy Dore. Love Jimmy Dore. At the point of the election, though, particularly during Sanders coverage was fucking awesome. But at some point, yeah, when you went for Hillary, this is where I get off. This is where I get off. Now, I say that to say that I don't have any grudge. I don't have any like or dislike of the network itself. I don't have a dislike of Cenk or anybody else in this case. I'm somewhat neutral in regards to how I regard this stuff. So I just want to make that clear right off the bat. The allegations themselves, or it's not even allegations, the things that were said, took place like 16 years ago. And it taking place 16 years ago, Cenk called himself a conservative. Now, let's be honest. Conservatives laughed at this, saying, this guy, he's trying to get away from these comments and calling himself a conservative. But let's be honest. Conservatives behave in this way. So that doesn't necessarily shock me in the least. It's like they think that being racist is somewhat being edgy. From the left standpoint, and I need to make this very point, these things are somewhat relative, though. Like, it is the wheelhouse of the left to be on the SJW side, the side of, we don't like people being sexist and racist. We don't like those people infringing on or saying things that adversely affect another person's what can we use it? I guess it's atmosphere of sorts. Like, I don't necessarily like being disrespected or offended in this way. Now, that's the left. Yeah, that's our wheelhouse. The right's wheelhouse is to be somewhat opposed to that. Meaning, let's be very honest, the racist on the spectrum tends to be on the right. I'm not saying everybody on the right is racist. I'm not saying everybody on the right is sexist. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, though, that there is a strong element that tends to be in that camp. It just is what it is. I think it's hard to argue that the opposite is not true. And again, this doesn't necessarily mean all. I'm just saying a faction, that particular faction. So, yeah, it is the left that tends to be on the other side of that particular spectrum. Here's the thing. The social justice warriors, the SJWs, are necessary, and at the same time, they can be absolutely annoying. It just works in both camps. You can't get away from it. There is no definitive. These things float in a certain amount of ranges. And what I'm getting at here is the outrage. And let me show this so we can see what we're talking about. There are two things. The outrage had to do with, oh my God, this comes across as being immensely sexist. It's like a grab him by the pussy video. That's the way I think I described it for Cenk Uygur. And I think a few of these are just immensely comical. The improbable breasts in Miami are only matched by the improbable butts. The improbable butts, I love that. This makes LA look real. Just when I think Miami is all done, it pulls me back in. Women is all outrageously and almost unacceptably hot. I don't see why that's offensive in the least. It seems like there's a sea of tits out there. Here I'm drinking tiny droplets. I want to dive in the whole goddamn ocean. Obviously, these women are flawed. They're poorly designed creatures who do not want to have sex. Essentially, women are somehow defective because they don't want to have sex with me, Cenk Uygur. The other rule where he said, if we're not making out by the third date, I'm getting rid of you, and somebody needs to have an orgasm on the fifth date. I kissed 23 women and grabbed a bunch of countless breasts in a drunken stupor, thanks to Jack Daniels. Here's the thing, man. I read this, and I thought to myself, some of this, yeah, it goes into this thing of slightly, I don't even feel like it's uncomfortable to read. The only one where I read where I was like, ugh, cringed on was the teenagers. Like talking about these women, these teenagers are going to be whores in training. That one is immensely uncomfortable to read. But and fair enough, take that off. That was Dave Kohler. I looked at this and I thought to myself, is anything that these guys are saying far beyond the pale of the way men and human beings think? Not really. And I'm saying, putting the Dave Kohler thing to the side, that one is a little rough. But the other ones, those are how guys think. If you had a bunch of guys together and those guys were just out there talking to one another, the moment that it goes around women, yeah, guys are going to talk like that. Improbable breasts is immensely funny. But is it offensive? I think what people are freaking out about, and I don't even know how many people are freaking out about this. Ultimately, the right wing or some even lefty media pulls out this stuff, and then people, lose their shit over it. I look at this and I think to myself, okay, these things are in ranges. And does this fall anywhere in a range where I find it to be immensely offensive? And then I think to myself, what does it mean for something to be immensely offensive? And as I thought about this, I thought, well, this stuff is always in a spectrum. The argument remains the same. The spectrum changes. In 1940s and 1950s, you could look at me and say, hey, nigga, how's it going? And I would say, it's going okay, sir. That was perfectly acceptable. Nigga had a certain connotation with it. It didn't necessarily matter. It had a connotation. You can use it. You can hit the person over the head, and you use it to establish your status in that particular society and enshrine the fact that that other person is of lesser status than you. Society changes. And it gets to the point of saying, you know what, that's kind of unacceptable. We don't like when you can say that. Now, mind you, that's an SJW argument, by the way. The argument remains the same. The spectrum changes. So in 1950s, the SJWs in this group would be like, hey, that's a little offensive. You shouldn't be able to do that. That's an immensely offensive word. And they were right. You're impinging upon this other person feeling free, or at the very least feeling like they belong in that society. So yeah, they were right. It goes along the spectrum. The spectrum remains the same. That guy who said, hey, nigga, how's it doing, is now at the very far end of the spectrum. Assuming that that person said, you know what, I agree with you, and it doesn't change. But the spectrum itself is still there. Whether you're talking about race, whether you're talking about sex, whether you're talking about bashing somebody for their sexuality or something like that, it's a spectrum. There is no definitive thing. There is no thing where you put your stake in the ground and said, this is definitive of what's acceptable and not acceptable in this particular spectrum of debate and conversation. I have to be honest. This gets slightly aggravating. Like, these conversations are slightly aggravating. They're human beings. People say stuff, and in saying stuff, they're going to piss people off in the things that they say, because not everybody is going to agree with the things that they say. Human beings look at this stuff and feel, for whatever reason, that how they see it is the definitive. This is the way things are. Everything else is relative to my particular perception of this particular event. And in my particular perception of this particular event, seeing that I am definitive and I am absolutely right, that this is the line, this is where this is supposed to be drawn, I'm going to be outraged. I am outraged. I'm going to slam my fist on the desk and I'm going to punch a computer screen. I am outraged. You're not the definitive. There is no definitive on this. This guy is expressing stuff that he himself was thinking at the time. I don't have to like it. I don't have to like it at all. I don't have to like it or dislike it. I guess my point is, whether or not this is sexist is going to somewhat depend on the individual who's looking at it. You would have some people who say, this is how guys think when they're talking to themselves. You have other people who say, I am immensely offended by this because I'm uncomfortable with him thinking about improbable breasts in the way that he's thinking about improbable breasts. Do you want a society where people can say the things that they want to say and express what they want to express? And should people be continuously castigated in this perpetual argument over what's acceptable and not every time they say something that puts somebody's ass on Twitter? It's like, come on. If Cenk Uygur grabs a woman's ass and she's angry about it, okay, fair enough. You're right. You shouldn't put your hands on somebody. Cenk Uygur said something to somebody that was immensely offensive and degrading. Fair enough. You shouldn't talk about someone in degrading ways. You're talking about an individual and that person is being put down in a certain way. But Cenk Uygur talking about improbable breasts. I don't understand the outrage over this. Do guys talk in this way? Are women shocked that guys talk in this way? Is anybody shocked that men talk in this way? And if you know that men talk in this way, what is the outrage? Where's the outrage? The grab him by the pussy video for Donald Trump, to some degree I look at it the same way. Slightly different, because Donald Trump is making this argument from the perspective of they just let you grab them by the pussy and they're okay with it. That sounds like a sexual assault. And if we're being fair, the most harshest critique of this is, well, dude was running through the streets of Mardi Gras grabbing women by the breasts. He was in a drunken stupor, or, you know, were all of these breast grabs consensual? So fair enough. That's why I do call it the grab by the pussy video. Grab by the tit video. But let's be honest, this stuff is on the spectrum. And is this one of those things where there's this massive amount of outrage that's necessary for men talking the way that women and everybody else knows that men talk? Where's the outrage? I started thinking about the Redskin thing. And yeah, again, that's somewhat offensive. It's somewhat offensive. So don't get me wrong. It's weird. This is not necessarily defense. This is more so a larger context of human beings are human beings, and human beings act in a particular way. And you've ensconced those human beings in a society where sex is rampant, and yet it's completely forbidden. It's weird in the way that human beings function in a way where they act like they don't do or behave or act or say certain things, even though everyone knows that they do and behave and act in those certain ways. So, yes, I'm not shocked that Cenk Uygur would talk about improbable breasts. I wouldn't be shocked at anybody talking about breasts. I wouldn't be shocked about anybody having lewd and sexual behavior. I wouldn't be shocked about anybody saying things or thinking things that were bad or insulting or any of that stuff. These are the people behaving as people. That's all. It's not. I look at this stuff from the standpoint of, I always say, a humanistic perspective. What does it mean to be a person? And do people think in those ways at times? And yes, people think in those ways at times. I don't understand the impulse to say, I need the world to know this. Yeah, I don't get that one. Some of the stuff is a little weird and strange in the way it's, I think women should fuck me because I'm Cenk Uygur and you're defective if you don't. That is a little weird and strange. But come on. At what point does it become somewhat oppressive? I understand the spectrum. Again, I make this case. This stuff goes in the spectrum. At which point does that struggle between those things? It's almost like the struggle for free, or this argument for private property. Like the very act of saying something is your expression or your private property. It's like you're putting the stake in the ground. Whether or not you can say that thing, or whether or not society recoils at the thing that you just said, it's almost like society is putting a boundary around you where don't cross this line. It's almost like private property. Somebody says, I bought this plot of land, so I am putting this encirclement around this land. Do not come here. I'm uncomfortable to some degree with the SJW thing when it gets into extremes. And I think this is one of those extremes. I think people, and again, this is not all of it. I'm just saying some of it. I think people behave this way. That's all. I don't want to beat a dead horse on it. It's just, I looked at this and I thought, some of this is weird. Some of this is swirly. The teenager thing, oh, this is kind of gross. But what does it mean to be a person? If you had anybody, any random person, and you looked at their last 30 years, and let's say their last 30 years was a line, are you telling me that you couldn't find a way to do a hit job and pull people apart if what they're expressing and saying and everything else over the course of the last 30 years? And are you saying that people don't change? Meaning people are fixed quantities from point A to point B throughout the course of their life. And if you admit that people do change, is something that an individual said 18 years ago still acceptable today? Like, can you still castigate somebody for saying something that they don't, maybe not necessarily believe? And I make the point that even if he does still believe this or talk in this way, I guess I'm asking, does it matter? What does it matter? That's what I'm saying. What is the individual doing? What is the individual trying to accomplish? And how does the individual engage people when he's talking to them in a normal way? And of course, I can see if he functioned this way with regards to his employees, where he's talking to them in this way. Yeah, that's dicey. You're essentially assaulting somebody at work. But I haven't heard that. I've heard somebody doing blog posts, being somewhat sexist in their blog posts. And somebody looks at this from 18 years ago and comes back and says, okay, this guy was being sexist back then 18 years ago. I don't know, man. I guess I look at this and I don't have huge feelings for this. I find this and be like, well, guys talking this way. It's like, are we pretending that guys don't talk in this way? It feels very similar to women not being able to bare their chests in public. That's what it feels like. It's like everybody in the society knows sex is this kind of bad thing. You can kill anybody, but sex, oh, that's really bad. That's vulgar. Everybody knows what's under women's shirts, and yet men can walk around bare-chested, but women can't. I don't know, man. It just seems weird. These cultural norms comes across as slightly weird to me. People have their boundaries. People have their ranges. The question really that we're talking about, I think it boils down to what's offensive and what should be considered offensive. And the fact is that stuff is a range. That is not a definitive point. An individual looks at this, being outraged over something that's a gray area is somewhat insane. You can dislike Cenk Uygur, you can dislike TYT, you can dislike all of these people, but ultimately having an outrage over something like this hits at this thing of what's acceptable and unacceptable speech. And do you really want to start putting lines around what people can say in this way? I get greatly uncomfortable with this idea of putting lines around speech. This has gone way too long. The next one I wanted to hit on is, what is the left? What is the left? What is the left? The left is having this weird thing of cannibalizing itself, which I don't quite understand. So you have factions of the left fractured. You have this far left versus this other part of the left. I don't know what a lot of these people mean when they say the left, if I'm being honest. I don't know what a lot of these people mean when they say progressive, if I'm being honest. What I do know, and what I boil this down to, is speech is somewhat slippery, and so I don't necessarily care what those people say in regards to where they fit on this stuff. What do you want to accomplish, and what do you do? That's what I care. When I hear somebody talk about the left, I hear a few things, and I know this goes in ranges, but this idea of making sure, let's boil it down to one phrase: people over profits. That human beings are far more important than other people trying to amass mounds and mounds of cash and everything else. And a society should function in a way that corresponds more so to individuals, not necessarily to other interests, meaning monetary interests. And moving in a direction that espouses that virtue. That's what I mean when I say the left. Now, I know other people have specific details and everything else, but I don't want to go far into it, so I'm just giving that basic idea of what I mean by that. You will have people disagree with you on a lot of specific things, with those people still being, for the most part, on the left. People take shots at Cedar, and TYT, and Door, and even me to some degree. And they would be like, you know, we are the left and you guys are not. And I do not understand that argument. The right understands that all of you people are in the same sandbox. All of you. At the end of the day, when it comes down to a particular policy position, you guys are usually on the same side. That means you're on the left. You can disagree with certain elements, but can we stop with the thing of you're not the left because of X, Y, Z, or you're not the left, or I'm the left? And what do you want to accomplish? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish from a policy position? That's why I determine what's on the left. If a policy position comes up and the person is taking a position that is not in line with this kind of humanistic view of things, then yeah, I consider on that particular position, the person is not necessarily on the left. But those things are specific. Those are specific. I think those things are contextual. That's the other point. Many of the objectives that you're trying to accomplish, 99% of the people that I hear talk about this stuff are on the same page. And yet, I would still hear people bitch at XYZ elements are not necessarily being on the left. Or will go after elements on the left. Or would have these petty gripes where they would just find any cause or pretense to go after elements of the left. I have to be honest, this comes across as what this is to me. Now, I don't necessarily know, and I suspect to some degree, that this is a hit job. And what I mean by that is, whether the Democratic Party is under assault, which it is, and it's assaulted from the first time on the left, it's very possible that elements of the people who voted for Jill Stein in certain states was enough to derail the Democratic Party's nomination in like Wisconsin, whatever. Now, yes, it had nothing to do with Jill Stein. It has everything to do with the failed candidate Hillary Clinton in this regard. But they seem to be attacking elements on their left because they understand that these elements on their left are A, problematic, B, exposes who they are not. That's the first point. That's the second point. And they're finding ways to neutralize these elements. Now, whether you're finding it's the Democratic Party that decided to do this, whether it was the right wing that decided to do this, ultimately, yeah, I think it's a hit job. I think they went searching for things that they can find on either TYT, Cenk, Uygur, or whatever element that they can find to tar these guys with. This is what they found. The left being the side for the social justice part, this idea of fighting for equal rights and, you know, not berating or not being vulgar in the way you regard people. Throwing this out as chum for this particular side of the political spectrum. And this particular side of the political spectrum went with it. Some went with it just because they hated TYT. Some went with it just because they didn't necessarily like Uygur. Some went with it because they didn't like Justice Democrats. And in the same way that Democrats go after Donald Trump, doesn't matter what comes up. It could be, you know, Russia, even though there's no link between Trump and Russia, and the Democrats will believe it just because they hate Donald Trump. Same thing. The left is not immune from acting like human beings. I have to be honest, I think this is some of the same. The right wing doesn't care about this stuff at all. And I would not be shocked if elements of the Democratic Party itself, finding themselves under attack, looking at these organizations being Our Revolution, Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, and looking for ways to tar and hit these organizations in the knees to undermine the organization itself. Al Franken, I don't know if Al Franken is still leaving. I heard something about trying to get out of the retire, but and getting those other guys out. Democrats want to take the high ground and use to attack Trump as being sexist. Even going so far as to say Bill Clinton was sexist and Bill Clinton should have stepped down. Mind you, this was like 20, 30 years later. But whatever, they threw it out there, kitchen sink. And now you're, oh my God, Cenk Uygur is sexist. Oh my God, Dave Kohler is talking about kids being whores. That one, I gotta be honest, that one is rough. That one is rough. And the left jumps on it and goes off. The left jumps off, goes off. I think it's a hit job. I think it's a hit job. The right wing hates these guys, so yeah, they're going to jump on it and they're going to scream about it, and they're going to say you guys are being hypocritical because you bashed the right for being sexist, and now you guys have stuff that you were sexist about 16 years or 18 years ago. The left wing, like I said, the far left, hits these guys, hate the fact that they voted for Hillary Clinton. I have to be honest, I'm one of those people. That is a bias of mine. You can see TYT on this. But the left is cannibalizing itself on this stuff. I strongly suspect that when one policy position after another comes up, all of these people who say they're against either TYT or against Cedar or against some of these other guys, all of you literally, from a policy position standpoint, will probably be going for the same thing. And I think my camera's just failed. Has my camera failed? Yes, my camera has failed. Guys, I'm going to have to stop this and try to refix. 1 second. Alright, I need to restart. Be right back. Okay, I am back. My camera froze on me. I don't know what's going on with it. Alright, I don't know where I left off. I think I left off on the hitchhop thing. Yeah, so look, this is, don't get me wrong, the stuff that they were talking about does come across as being weird and strange and everything else. And I don't think it's crazy for people to make the comparison to say, well, you guys go after people who say stuff like this. And so, yes, that's absolutely true. But come on. This comes out of a right-wing magazine. These guys in no way cares about the stuff that they're talking about. And they themselves talk in these ways, these weird ways. And they're pulling stuff that took place 16, 17, or 18 years ago in order to use it to tar the head of the organization. So yeah, come on. This is politics to some degree. Let's not pretend that this is not politics. And let's also not pretend that this wasn't thrown out purely in order to get this kind of cannibalizing effect for Uygur and Cal. That's the other part. This is not just separate and distinct from anything else from the standpoint of politics. I think Democrats full well understand that they're being hit from the left and they want to neutralize the things that are hitting them from their left. That's my thought. That's totally my thought. People being outraged over it. That's the part that gets me, I think. It's the, I guess it's outrage to what end? I guess that's what I get at. I guess I don't feel any particular way about it. Yeah, outrage to what end? Somebody says something 18 years ago. Are people held to a standard in perpetuity when they say something? I guess that's what I'm getting at. So the last thing I want to mention on this, the effect. Like, so what's the effect? So Cenk Uygur resigned, Cal resigned, Kohler resigned, all of these guys resigned. The resignation itself, I think, is not so much, I think it's more to do with them not wanting to have the conversation about, oh my God, we're talking about sexuality when we just want to run our candidates. I think that's the beginning and end of it. You look at something from a political standpoint, I think Cenk full well understands that he's in politics. He understands that he's on the left. He understands that you have people on the left who are very heavily in this SJW camp. And they went after him. So he understands the easier way to deal with this is to just say, yes, you're right. This is horrible. I said bad things. I shouldn't have said those things. I carried the arc. I changed, etc., etc., etc. There's no way to know what Cenk Uygur believes right now. There's no way to know how Cenk Uygur acts, in and of himself right now. Does anyone know what it means for a person to know what a person means or what it matters? I'm saying this poorly. Yeah, I'm saying this poorly. Cenk Uygur resigned purely because he didn't necessarily want to deal with the flack from it. And I suspect he wanted Justice Democrats to be not tarred by what's taking place in this regard. Resigning was the easier choice. Cal probably resigned because Cenk resigned. So, unless we find something where, Cal was saying something salacious about some guy, I'm joking. Yeah, that's going to be the resignation. Thing is, I don't think the resignation is going to have any effect on Justice Democrats at all. If anything, it may actually be a positive. The far left, Justice Democrats are going to need lefties to vote for them. They are. And if there is any hedge or anything else because there's some kind of association with TYT and JD, then yeah, Cenk Uygur and Cal leaving it actually may be a positive benefit for it. It's weird, it's strange, but it's true. TYT is still going to support their candidates. So what's the other benefit, or what's the other thing that you were going to get with them not being affiliated with the organization? You can still be part of the organization. You have a media platform, so you're still helping and assisting Justice Democrats in doing the things that they're doing. They themselves don't need to be a part of the mix in this. It doesn't hurt them at all. I don't see how it hurts. They still get the benefit of having a political vehicle to try to get their candidates in, while at the same time not necessarily having the headwind from whoever dislikes that organization. So, but I've read this. I mean, I looked at this over and over again, and I thought to myself, am I being fair in this? And if I think back to my own life, and if I think back to either college, or if I think back to those nights we were playing chess, hell, even the barbershop, how do human beings interact with human beings when those are just men? How do women interact with women when they're just women? I mean, women, they're just there to themselves. How do they talk amongst themselves? I would imagine that if you could find those conversations, those things would be pretty salacious. And I would imagine some of that stuff would be somewhat raunchy and everything else. Is it offensive is a question. And what does it mean to be offended? What's offensive? What's offensive? And does this meet that bar of standard that is a definitive, that this is definitively offensive to anybody who's reading it? I don't know if it meets my standard. I don't know if it meets my standard. I understand him resigning. I get it. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to do so. I didn't necessarily think TYT should be affiliated with him in the first place. I thought they were better off just supporting as opposed to actually being affiliated with it. So I don't necessarily care one way or the other about the resignation. But I didn't get outrage over this. Like, I didn't get this thing of, see, I don't know how they act on a normal basis, though. So bake that into the cake. I don't know how, I don't know how the show proceeds on a regular basis. But this wasn't something that outraged me. It's one thing if he's touching somebody, he's offended somebody, he was being sexist or something like he's degrading or berating somebody. But am I going to get offended every time somebody says something that's somewhat raunchy or somewhat, yeah, I don't get offended with this stuff. I don't always get offended with this stuff. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, let's see what the audience is talking about. I saw this, and I know some people might believe that this is more than a hit job, but greater thumbs. The rap broke the story is on Jordan, LinkedIn. Don't want to be conspiracy theorists, but I wouldn't put it past him after TYT fallout. Oh, that's interesting. So you think Jordan might have put that up? Like he might have went looking for stuff on TYT. Greener thumbs. That's interesting. That's interesting. That's very interesting. That is damn interesting. All right, let's see. Let's see. I suspect that I'm going to have people disagree with me on this. Let me just say one last thing. I try to wager this stuff when I look at this, and I say to myself, what does it mean to be a human being? And what does it mean to be a human being from the standpoint of being able to express myself as a human being, but at the same token, having some level of restraint because you acknowledge that other human beings exist? That's the struggle. That's what it boils down to. That changes in your society, meaning at some point in society, I can be belligerent and sexist to any particular person I want it to be, and the society will look at it as he's just being the guy. As opposed to you moving on and it's like, hey dude, that's a little much. You probably shouldn't say that, you're going to offend somebody. I guess the argument is over what's the demarcation point in the line of offense. And does a blog that somebody wrote 18 years ago meet that line of offense? And I look at this, it doesn't offend me. And you can say it doesn't offend me because I'm a guy. That may be true, but it doesn't offend me because it's like, do women have breasts and nipples? And it's like, yes. And if everybody knows that, why is it okay for men to walk around without a shirt, but women have to put a shirt on? It's like, why can't they go bare-chested at the beaches? This is how this feels to me. It's everybody in society knows men think in these terms. Not all the time, but when men are with each other, yeah, men talk and think in this way. So why are we pretending as if they don't? They're not being belligerent. They're not being vulgar to any particular person. This guy is writing a blog post that's just kind of out in the ether. I don't understand how this is a fatal flaw that essentially people are making it out to be. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it. So let's hear what people say. The Democratic Party has moved so far to the right in lying, disingenuous manner that it has to be made a litmus test inevitable. Here we go. Jagarno. Bonnie, when there are millions involved, That's what it weighed down. TYT was collecting checks. Dave Kohler was a treasurer. Let me talk about that one too, right? People will give them shit for taking money, and I don't understand that one. So I get it from the standpoint of the left. The left looks at cash as being this kind of salacious thing. Being on the left, I see that too. Hell, I'm in the camp of saying I want a cashless society. I don't want money to be a part of our society. So already break that into the cake that I agree with you that cash is the salacious thing. But come on. Come on. You're having an organization that's, for the most part, anti-media to some degree. Yes, they've become more attached to the political apparatus, which I don't particularly like. But ultimately, they were lefty media. They didn't have this thing where they were getting commercials and all this other stuff. Ultimately, they had to make their way from a YouTube channel and grow and employ and all this other stuff. How are they going to do that without taking donations? Ultimately, you had a public decided that they liked the product and decided to fund that particular product. I don't know how people give them shit for taking money on this. I suspect I don't like the organization because I don't like the organization. I don't want the organization taking money, so I think these guys are just taking money for whatever. The taking money doesn't bother me. Any group, any political apparatus, anything that functions in this capitalistic society needs cash in order to function. That doesn't bother me, at least. I don't like the TYT went for Hillary. I can't stand the fact they went for Hillary. But I have to be honest. I don't have this grudge against the group. This feels like somewhat of an attack, and it feels like throwing this stuff out on the left. The left eats it up because the left is the SJW side and is rabid in terms about the SJW stuff, not realizing that that's a floating ranges. At which point does a person being able to express something treads on that person just being a human being? And I think that's why I fall in on the set. Yeah, that's why I fall in on the set. It's like these guys are just being human beings. Independent outsider. Triggered. For you history buffs, what movement has been changed substantively merely by taking up space in the room? I don't know, Bonnie. I don't know what you mean. Bonnie Florine. For you history buffs, what movement has been changed substantively merely by taking up space in the room? I don't know what that means. Lazy comments. This is more of a riddle than a direct question, Bonnie. Yeah, it is. Based on the Justice Democrats statement, I don't think it's a mindfuck. I think the conflict is real. They weren't clear about support for Justice Democrats, just candidates. Based on the Justice Democrats statement, I don't think this is mindfucked. I think the conflict is real. They weren't clear about support Justice Democrats, just the candidates. Agreed, Jamal. Hit job. Hakira Chi. Peace and love and steak and cats. Independent outsider. That's funny. D. Scully. I really wish people would stop associating establishment with the left. You're conflating the two, JT. Establishment with the left. D. Scully, I'm not sure what you mean on this one. Yeah, I fixed it. I got it. I don't think, yeah, I'm still here. It's not that I'm trying to conflate the two. I'm making this point of, when I say the left, and again, words are slippery. It's like what you mean by the left may be fundamentally different than what I mean by the left. How do I know what you mean by the left? This is kind of what I mean when I say policy stuff. People oftentimes make this point of, oh, those guys aren't the left, even though 99% of the stuff that you guys would push for in policy is the exact same fucking thing. It's used purely as an insult. It's not necessarily used from the standpoint of an actual conversation or actual policy difference. If I'm making that point clear. There's more here than just a political hit job. That's part of it, but not all. Cardinal, thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Leftists used to be having movements hijacked or cannibalized civil disobedience. You know what? I think it's because they look at it and say, what's... The left, don't get me wrong, the left isn't wrong on this. Meaning the SJW stuff is necessary. The problem with it is it becomes... They don't look at it as this kind of existential struggle that always exists, you know, just... The range of it continues to exist. It's just where you are in that range. It's almost like a range of debate that takes place that's considered acceptable. Things outside of that range considered somewhat unacceptable, but the range is always there. The spectrum doesn't change. We've moved up along the spectrum, meaning we don't talk to blacks in a particular way. We don't talk to gays in a particular way. We don't talk to Hispanics in a particular way. And the fringe jobs, the fringe is where the normal used to be. The spectrum, however, hasn't gone anywhere. The argument is not something where there's a definitive, this is the part where sexist and nothing else beyond this point. People mistaken their perspective of the world as being the definitive, of the world. It's not. It's not. People say things oftentimes. People would think things that would annoy you and piss you off. To what end? You can think that person or that you want to think of that person. Are you telling me that there are not things that you've said in your life that you would look back on and say, I probably shouldn't have said that? And if it was exposed and if it was put online and people will look at you a particular way, can you as a human being live up to that particular type of scrutiny? And if you cannot, can you really take issue with each and everything that comes out that somebody says that's somewhat offensive or bugs you or gets on your nerves? I'm just not blown away by this. My grandfather's Native American. At one point, Andrew Jackson was this fucking awesome guy, despite Andrew Jackson murdering people like my grandfather. Times change. People change. The society itself changes. The range of conversation changes. At which point does it get so far in any particular direction that people can't express just what it means to be a person? I'm not saying being hateful. I'm not saying being racist and sexist and all this other stuff. I'm not saying something that's degrading to somebody else. But certainly there are ranges in these things. I mean, come on. Come on. Jim Hurd, never a dull moment. LA Times reports memorial for 2010 homeless who died with Obamacare in the streets of Orange County. No memorial for the 1,000 homeless died in LA in 2017. Jim Hayden. Chateau. Stephanie, I saw Stephanie somewhere. It's fucking annoying. It fucks makes you want to kick them in the head and be like, how's the high kick for being chubby fathead? What? Oh, Stephanie, don't get violent. Don't get violent. God, no. I think Justice Democrats will sue TYT and Jordan is suing them. If TYT doesn't settle, they would have to open their books. That's when the real scandal starts. So, Gardner, you think this is a money thing? You think you want to see how they're spending the money that they're getting into the organization? I agree with you. That should be transparent. Agreed. That should be transparent. Agreed. RAW. You're exactly right. I'm so confused about the left. I don't know a perfect person. Maybe they do, but the level of judgment is ridiculous. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Cenk is just the type of jerk I wouldn't hang out with, but this seems to keep it professional. But he seems to keep it professional. Yes, agreed. Like, my wife and I say some of the most racist stuff that you can ever imagine. Neither one of us are racist to any degree. We're saying it in this kind of joking way, being immensely sarcastic in the way that we're saying it. If you took any of that stuff out of context, you would be like, oh my God, this guy is completely racist. Now, the stuff that I've seen them put out, talking about Cenk and talking about the other guy, and again, I parse out the women thing, the kids thing, because that seems to be a bit rough. I don't care what your political leanings are. That's, again, I don't get outraged by most of the stuff that comes out. I get outraged more so about what people do, not necessarily what people say, if that makes sense. So my feelings aren't necessarily aroused by this. The story, it feels like scandal. Human beings are being human beings. More at 6. And it's like, oh, this human being is being a human being. God damn it, I can't believe this human being is being a human being. It's like, okay, person's in person. There's a range to the SJW stuff. There would be some stuff where I'm like, yes, I defend these guys on because I think these guys are right to be outraged about what's taking place. And yes, I think the person's being racist or sexist or whatever. But they need to accept the gray area. And they need to accept that human beings are human beings. There are going to be certain things that people say that are going to piss other people off. Get over it. I'm sorry, get over it. Maybe we should separate the word politics from the politics of sophistry, which are politics based on rhetorical messages. Interesting. I'm outraged by the hypocrisy mostly and disgusted by the teen and redskin comment. Agreed, Gardner, agreed. Their failure to properly run an organization they started is hilarious. So, Guard, I have to be honest, I didn't like the redskin statement either. I didn't like that redskin statement. This gets to my point, though, meaning the argument of being, what does it mean to be offended, if that makes sense? I don't know. It's strange. It's like there's a part of me is saying, oh, man, I don't like that. But what does it mean for me to like that? Is it just, I agree, I don't want to agree that people should defame other people in this way. Maybe that's it. People should respect other people and talk about those people in the way that they themselves want to be talked about. So let's say that's our standard. But you understand, even that standard, there's gray area because some people wouldn't necessarily care about these conversations. the left has to get over this. They have to get over this. I'm sorry. Like Garnome, I agree with you. You could take shots at their books, and you could be like, they need to show their books. I need to see what they're spending the money on, etc., etc. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, granted, if you're not contributing to them, then I don't necessarily know. I don't know if you have a claim on it. But ultimately, that part, I get it. But being outraged over comments 18 years ago seems a little much. That's all. I understand why they resigned from Justice Democrats. They didn't want to bring the flack to the Justice Democrats, so fair enough. But it seems like you can still support Justice Democrats, not being affiliated with Justice Democrats. I don't understand why you need to be associated with the political arm of this organization. You're in news. Be news. Be news. Okay, somebody's giving me a super chat. Hey, would do great things and should not attempt all of them alone. Cynical proverb. He who would do great things should not attempt to do them alone. A cynical proverb. I agree with that, by the way. I think you're trying to make the point that, hey, you can do something awesome just being in a media outlet. You don't necessarily have to do all of it. You don't have to be media and the politician. Agreed. Agreed. Guys, thank you for the super chats. Those things are, I completely appreciate it. I really do. I don't hit a point. I don't nail home like the super chat thing much or the Patreon contributors much. I do it this kind of perfunctory way at the end of the video. But I do appreciate it. I know some people start their videos off saying, I want to thank all my subscribers and blah, blah, blah. I didn't get in this for subscribers. I didn't get in this initially for, to make ends meet or anything else. I got in it because I was motivated to get into it. I was just driven by it. And so being able to assist my living in this helps tremendously. So I may not say much about the thank yous and everything else, but I do appreciate you guys' super chats, and I do appreciate the patrons. It's absolutely appreciative. Let's see. What grounds do Justice Democrats have to sue TYT? I don't know. I don't know who said it. Dave Caller condemned West Virginia, saying we're getting what we deserve for not voting correctly, like we're some political anomaly and everybody else votes intelligently. Red Economics, yeah, I agree. That's a stupid-ass comment. Here's the thing. Here's a question. What does it mean to be a person? I look at this stuff. I look at a lot of stuff. And when I said I think Jordan was over the top and inappropriate at work, but I don't believe he was a rapist, that was me being honest in regards to how I regarded it. No feelings, whatever, whatsoever for Jordan, TYT, Cenk, any of these guys. And I know the standard and the spectrum changes, meaning over time. So knowing that the spectrum changes, it's like, where do you put your stake in the ground? Are you just a dandelion along in the wind with whatever the spectrum is, or do you have some level of this is where I stand? Mine is on humanism. What does it mean to be a person? That's where I am. That's why I put my stake in the ground. That's how I evaluate this stuff. And from what does it mean to be a person in a society that's ensconced in sex, in a society that has women for sale, meaning the way they show sex and advertise sex and everything else. And same thing with men. Men walking around bare-chested, cut and ripped and, showing you a watch or, showing off something else. They sell sex in order to sell their products. And yet sex is this bad thing and men aren't supposed to talk in this way, even though advertisements do the exact same thing and the movies do the exact same thing. It's a weird mix. Here's sex. We're going to advertise this taboo thing. And yes, people have sex all the time. And yes, they have sex with their wives and their mistresses and all this other stuff. But it's taboo and you shouldn't necessarily talk about it. And you don't bring it up in society and you can't show it in your movies and etc. etc. It's just weird. It's very weird. It's very, very bizarre. I don't quite get it. But I have to be honest. I don't have the energy to be outraged at each and everything people say. What does a person do? And what is that person trying to accomplish? And if aspects of you was exposed to the limelight, are you telling me that you would live up to the scrutiny that you're putting on these other people? There may be certain things that you might say, yes, I'm good at this specific thing. I act this way in this particular way, in this context. But are you telling me that each and every part of your context will live up to the standard that each and every other person set in society? Fuck no, that's an impossible standard. So yeah, I am not outraged. I'm not blown away. I'm not shocked by guys saying things that guys typically say. That's why I put my stake in the ground. That's my judgment on this. I'm not blown away by this. I understand them leaving, I understand them backing away and everything else, but not so much. As opposed to the West Virginia red economics, yeah, that's fucking insane. That's insane. Stephanie, does seem to try that he's just one of those types of people, I think. Those types of people, what? I'm not an attorney, but TYT has a long history of misusing funds, and when there are millions involved, lawsuits in common. We will see. Yeah, Gardner, we'll see, man. We'll see. We'll see if you're right. I mean, I know you have feelings about TYT. I've parsed my feelings out to the Hillary thing. When I think about what's the bee in my bonnet in the TYT thing, I think it's the attack on Trump. It's the establishment thing, like we're against the establishment, but vote Hillary Clinton. I don't think you can have it both ways. I just don't think you can mind the gap in that way. Also, being affiliated with the Democratic Party is weird to me, man. It's weird. Are you going to tell people to vote in something else if somebody else is in their best interest? If you're affiliated with one of the parties in this way, meaning if the best selection or the best choice is to go a different way, can you and your media network now have the integrity to be separate and distinct from the political apparatus to tell your public that? Come on. The argument that TYT used to make, or at the very least, as far as I know, they used to make, I still think they do make it, money influences politics. If I'm giving you a lot of money, you're doing things for my interests. Well, even if it's not money, there are other things that influence people also. Political influence, getting your way, those things influence individuals. If you have competing interests, can you tell people that the competing interest is better when you're affiliated with one of those things? It's like an oil company trying to hit a solar power company in the knees. Maybe that solar power is better. The oil company doesn't give a shit that solar power is better for the society. It wants to make its profits and it wants to exceed. So, yeah, it gets a little weird, man. I understand people's hesitation with this. So don't get me wrong. I just don't feel like this is massive, if that makes sense. And yes, I know some people are going to bathe in their blood. So I know H.A. Goodman is going to, rather himself up. But Justice Democrats needed the publicity of TYT, and it is going to continue. Yeah, there's no way. I mean, TYT, of course, they're still going to come out and say, hey, we want you to vote for this candidate or that candidate. This is kind of my point. I don't think any of that changes. What changes? Like, why would, if what's her name? If the woman is running in West Virginia, oh, what is her name? I can't think of her name. I'm Sturgeon, Paula Sturgeon. I can see her face. Paula Sturgeon running in West Virginia. Are you telling me that TYT is still not going to support Paula Sturgeon? They still cover politics. TYT politics will likely cover Paula Sturgeon. And yes, the main network will probably cover her too. Them leaving the organization, I don't see how this hurts the organization. That makes sense. Unless they're leaving and they're pissed off. I would wager to some degree that Cenk Uygur himself might have said, okay, I'm resigning from this. Or just agree that, yes, I don't want anything to happen to the organization. And it's probably will support the organization behind the scenes. That's my thought. I don't see why they would just completely abdicate from the organization. That's my position, in a way. It's like calling out Cenk on his insinuating whatever mainstream media does about WikiLeaks. She put some smear piece using stuff from decades ago that makes the left and right populists look retarded. What's it again? Like calling Cenk out on his insinuating whatever mainstream media does about WikiLeaks. She puts smear piece using some stuff from decades ago that makes the left and the right populists look retarded. Well, yeah, of course they're going to do that. They don't like their contention. TYT spin doctors. CUDA, man. I hear a lot of people say that. I actually hear a lot of people say that. I don't watch the network. Maybe I need to start watching TYT. I wouldn't want to watch H.A. jerk off copter. Ew. Yeah, he's been flipping out over this. Rebel, yeah. Rebel, he's been loving it. He's been loving it. The Jordan thing, man, I hope H.A. has a contract with each and every person he hooks up with. I hope H.A. doesn't have anything weird on the web. I hope he is airtight, because I swear to God, they're going to come for him. Somebody is going to get his ass. He is like bathing in their blood. He's like, oh, you're going to resign from TYT. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, he's feeling it. He is feeling it. Angry Cascadian. Who silenced Anna K's vehement Bernie or Jill comment? Cenk or Saban or Soros? Real women do Bonnie! Exclamation point. Even Cal said, only vote third party if you're not going to swing state. A lot of us held our nose to vote for Hillary Clinton to avoid Trump. Tax bill would fuck poor people over under Hillary Clinton, but not like that. Right, green or thumbs, yeah, let's have that conversation. Fair enough. The tax bill would fuck people over, but not as bad as this. But why are you voting for somebody who's going to fuck you over in the first place? This is like that Sam Cedar concentration camp argument. Why give them your support? Yes, you're going to have to walk in the wilderness for a while, as Chris Hedges would say. But why are you supporting somebody who's still going to do gross and nasty shit? You've aligned yourself in a way where you're stuck with one particular party because you're terrified of the other party. Meaning Hillary Clinton could come in, she could privatize Social Security, she can put troops in Syria, she could still go in these bombing campaigns, killing and usurping governments. She can do all that. Ted Cruz runs in 2020, and your argument is going to be the exact same argument here. Hillary Clinton did all these really bad things, but 2024, the next robot. This person did all these bad things, but you always have the buts. Why are you, these improbable buts? As Cenk would say, improbable buts. Why are you accepting this? Why? Or when will you get to the point where you say, I understand that Republicans are rabid and crazy, but I'm not going to be complicit in this party that's supposed to represent my interests? And in no way is Hillary Clinton giving a tax cut representing your interests. And if so, Hillary Clinton should lose. If the philosophical responsibility ends up with the Democratic Party in this country to deal with income inequality and deal with economic stresses and these issues with being a human being, meaning the left, if that is their philosophical responsibility and they failed in that responsibility, why should you co-sign your failure? Why? Don't you want something that would actually represent workers and people and not go into this idea of markets being more important than human beings while at the same time parroting stuff that they would say under FDR, essentially lying to you? When do you get sick of that? When do you get tired of it? When do you get tired of it? That's my point. Like, I understand Donald Trump is a fucking maniac, but Donald Trump being a maniac doesn't necessarily give Hillary Clinton or Democrats this kind of carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want. And why are you co-signing this idea that they do whatever the hell they want? It's like all of you are held captive. Labor, blacks, Hispanics, LGBTQ, all of you are held captive by a certain amount of ambiguity on their side. They scream identity at the top of their lungs, and then you have a situation where these people are going to be deported. And they fold. They fold. Why do you co-sign this? Why do you co-sign this? These people are fucking failures. And giving them your vote for failing it this way, failing from a philosophical standpoint and from a human being standpoint. It's like, come on. It annoys me. Can't stand Sam Cedar. He seems like a jerk. Yeah, sometimes Sam Cedar can be a smug asshole. I agree. Civil disobedience. The worst thing that can happen is Democrats successfully weaponize Trump and do too well in the midterms. Maybe. Let's talk about that. Maybe. It depends. It's not that clear cut. It's not that clear cut. All right. So one of the things that I like about HA, that I actually like, is that HA has been going balls out against Democrats. I used to watch his show. I don't get the chance to watch it as much now just because I do my own channel and, work and everything else. But every so often, a title will come up what I think would be interesting. And every so often, I'm just curious because if I'm being honest, it seems somewhat is kind of funny. Like, he would be going in on Jordan, and you're looking at these women, one after the next, and HA is asking them these questions. And it's clear that he's doing it to milk it because he just wants to put a knife in Jordan. And then the TYT thing comes up, and he's euphoric. He's euphoric. It's a restrained euphoria with him just sticking a knife in him. So, but the one thing I like is this unrelenting, balls out, I understand what the problem is in our modern politics, and that problem is the Democratic Party. I have no expectations of Republicans. Anything that gets done on the left gets done through that party, meaning that is the main political apparatus. To create something on the left, you need something on the left to contest and try to attack that party. You need a specter and the organization itself to make that party conform. And without that specter or without that thing on the side, the party is going to do whatever that party wants, and it's going to conform to cash. In the 2018 midterm elections, it looks like Democrats may take the House regardless of the gerrymandering, and they may take the Senate. the gerrymandering, if that takes place, meaning this is going to be during a redistricting period, meaning those districts can be redrawn. We're at a point where those districts can be redrawn. It was like every 10 years. If Sanders takes the primary with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, those Democrats, maybe corporate Democrats, those Democrats may be right-wingers, but those Democrats are not going to get anything passed with the Bulworths in office. What you will probably find is Sanders trying to affect his particular agenda, meaning this left-wing agenda, and those guys are have to conform or lose. I suspect they're going to conform or lose. I suspect this movement, this revolution thing that Sanders created, where he has a political arm and the political apparatus working in tandem on the outside and on the inside, can be an amazing asset to put pressure on the political apparatus itself. Look at Cory Booker. I use Cory Booker as an example on this. Cory Booker undercut Bernie Sanders' medical plan, meaning Bernie Sanders tried to put a bill out in order to get prescription drugs pulled in from Canada. Cory Booker put a knife in Bernie Sanders. Everybody knew it. Lefties screamed at the top of their lungs and mauled Cory Booker. And Cory Booker was in this pathetic, undignified state on Twitter of just sending off an article. One article saying, the left attacking Cory Booker is senseless. And Cory Booker says, hey, no, don't attack me, guys. I actually have a bill that I'm working with Bernie Sanders to do, blah, 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 blah. I'm torn on this thing. Democrats losing in the midterms allows somewhat of a cosign to whatever Donald Trump is going to do in that office. It feels like to me that sending Mothra to attack Godzilla is not necessarily a bad idea. I strongly suspect, when people are saying that HA is backing up Trump, what HA is doing is sending Mothra to attack Godzilla. He understands these guys are in power. And I could be completely wrong on this. I could be mischaracterizing this. My point is, he understands that the problem is the Democratic Party. In understanding that the problem is the Democratic Party, I actually agree with him. I agree with him. You can drag the Republicans to the left, but you're dragging them to the left not because you're forcing them on policy. You're dragging them to the left because the political apparatus itself is moving to the left. The spectrum is not going anywhere. The spectrum is there. The question becomes, where do the parties move on that spectrum? Democrats moved so far to the right because they had nothing to stop them from moving that far to the right. There was no stopgap. They weren't representing labor. They weren't representing the people themselves. Ultimately, they were representing the cash that people were putting in their pockets while using this historic momentum to talk about these other issues. Using identity as the thing that unites, since identity is not unprofitable to them. It's not unprofitable. Nobody on the political apparatus that's paying them is against identity, so that's an easy thing to grab onto. So yeah, so I like him on this point. I guess what I'm getting at is having a lefty take the presidency and being able to force the agenda with Democrats in office may not be a bad thing. I gotta be honest. I may want them to lose in certain elections because I want to get across that you need to fail. By the same token, and when I'm looking at the political apparatus, and I think in 2020 there's a chance that Bernie Sanders takes the presidency, I want Bernie Sanders to have something that he can manipulate to get that shit done and get that shit passed. And I want a clear distinction, a defined distinction between who is representing a particular path and who is not. Meaning, the people who are not towing that agenda needs to be mauled. It needs to be a clear distinction of what it means to be the left in this country. And I'm saying that distinction is going to be made if Sanders takes the presidency. If he does it, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the same stuff that you've always done, the same status quo. That's what I'm saying. It's not the easiest thing in the world to say that I hope they lose in 2018 and 2020. From a political standpoint of what I want to get accomplished, I am not... Oh, man. Let me say it this way. Them losing the governorship, I could live with that. I could live with that. The gerrymandering is something different. I weigh this. I weigh this from the standpoint of this kind of I know this sounds bad. It's not sound bad. It's just the way it is. A pragmatic point of view. What happens in 2020 if Sanders runs in a primary? And what happens if Sanders wins that primary? If Sanders wins that primary, and what's in Congress right now are Republicans, Sanders gets nothing accomplished outside of executive orders. If Democrats are in office, then they have a problem. Ultimately, they've said, a lot of them, we're okay with Medicare for all. And those Democrats are going to have to deal with and explain to the American public why they're not on board for the stuff that these other Western countries have. And do you honestly believe that Bernie Sanders is going to be a shrinking valley when trying to push forward this thing of these are the reforms and the things that we want to accomplish? Those Democrats are either going to conform or fail. And there will be people to spring up to take them out that seat. That this is why I'm dicey on this. I understand this aspect of their ability to lose matters. Their ability to lose is the pressure that you get to make them change. My attacks on, I guess you can call them attacks, on this kind of reform commission is that the higher the chance that Democrats have to win in 2018, the less your bargaining chip goes down. Meaning the last thing you should wait for on a unity commission is for like 4 months. You should get that done as soon as you possibly can to enshrine those things that everybody knows that those things are in place. If it gets to the point where they're looking at polling and they're seeing that, oh, we're going to win. We don't have to change squat. We're going to win. There is no impetus at that point to go through with those unity reforms. And there is nothing that can be done at that point. They look at the polls. We're going to win. Fuck off. We're good. Go away. Throw their champagne on you. Get out of here, you Bernie bros. So we'll see. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, but we'll see. DNC will never give up on identity politics and will continue losing. They will put up a neoliberal and a light brown skin. What, the African American? That's wrong. That's light racist. No, Kamala Harris. Lefties are not going to vote for her. Lefties are not going to vote for Cory Booker. They feel like they cheated Bernie Sanders. That's the beginning and end of it. You've lost. You will be able to scare a lot of people to put forth a certain policy. But whether you realize it or not, Obama was a scorched earth neoliberal. He was scorched earth. Him being in this political apparatus and the way that he was in this apparatus, you can't scream hope and change this way. And you can't tell people that you're for this or you're for that and then not deliver and not even try to deliver and be extraordinarily weak in the process of delivering or saying that you're doing it. And then at the end of your presidency, you say, here's the change that I say I was going to deliver. We've arrived to the promised land. What the fuck are you talking about, arrived to the promised land? He didn't say promised land. I'm saying promised land. I'm just saying it's you've tarnished your image, whether you realize it or not. If you're going to hit that, you've tarnished your image. That's all I'm saying. When all the trees have been cut down, all the animals have been hunted, and all the waters polluted, only then will we discover that we cannot eat money. Who is your name? You have a crossbones. Oh, you don't have a name. Skull and Crossbones. I call you Skull and Crossbones. They believe it's real. Skull, yeah, they believe it's real. They believe cash is real. They believe all this stuff is real. None of this stuff is real. My desk is real. This camera is real. Other human beings are real. Cash is not. Those things are mental gimmicks. We've come up with a mental gimmick to give 1% of the globe, 60% of the resources. Imagine that. Imagine that. You have 10 people in a room. They deliver a pizza. One guy says, fuck all of you. I deserve 99 slices. And everybody in the room says, yeah, okay. He's come up with some logical reason why he gets 99 slices. That's fucking insane. Denny's the Dreamer. Establishment, Republican, Democrats, left equals Democratic base. Yeah, fair enough. That's how the spectrums move, I agree. Chomsky is brilliant, but he's part of the establishment. It's just his niche. Criticizing the establishment, he would be lost in the system change significantly. Terry Robinson, that's not true. That's not true. Noam Chomsky, they don't even allow Noam Chomsky on television. Have you noticed that? Like, if you're saying that Chomsky is part of the establishment, if you notice, they don't allow Chomsky on television. Do you know why they don't allow Chomsky on television? Chomsky will get on television and essentially criticize the American government for the things that the American government is doing. And he put forth an argument giving context to how we respond and how other people respond, meaning we respond to other people in the same way that we are, or we are judged by the same way we judge other people. That's what he's saying. And whether you realize it or not, that's my argument in all of my videos. Some of my arguments come directly from the standpoint of the way Chomsky addresses the world. Chomsky, Zen, those guys. If I'm regarding something, meaning if I'm holding myself to a standard, if I'm holding someone else to a standard, I hold them to my same standard. Do I say things? Do I act in ways? Do I behave in ways? Do people in general in this particular society behave in particular ways? And can I castigate and can I wag my finger at somebody if they're behaving in a particular way that I behave in or that I think human beings typically behave? Not so much. Chomsky will get on television and say, look, we broke one deal after another with the Soviet Union after it went bust. A lot of those people in Russia died as a result from us raping the Russian public, meaning converting that government from communist to capitalist government. We took massive advantage of their government and their system, and millions of people died because of it. Chomsky would get on there and say, we said that we weren't going to expand the borders of NATO, and we continue to expand NATO to surrounding that particular country. That's what we said. We continuously lied, and we continuously broke each and every agreement with that government. And now we're taking a hostile posture. That's what Chomsky would say. Nobody in the mainstream media will make that argument. Nobody in the mainstream media will make that case, even though what I said is perfectly and exactly true. It's perfectly true. We have encroached on their borders, one country after the next. The Ukrainian government had gotten to the point where the Ukrainian government was moving to the left. And they thought to themselves, oh, moving towards the west, they said that way. Ukraine is a buffer zone. The United States was willing to go to nuclear war when the Soviet Union put missiles in Cuba because Cuba is on our border. Why is the United States in Syria? Why is the United States or any Western country pushing on the Ukraine in this way? They ended up with a fucking civil war. They're trying to pick a left in their borders. We give these things. It's like nobody will make that argument on mainstream media. That's what I'm saying. Chomsky is not part of the establishment. Chomsky is an anarchist. He full well believes that human beings should not necessarily engage in the way that we engage. And if they ask him this, he would tell them this. And he would make that argument in probably some of the best ways that I've ever heard people make that argument. That's the last thing they want. That's the last thing they want. So, where did all the Pizzagate people go on Roy Moore? Weird how they disappeared. Isn't it? Isn't it weird? Isn't it strange? Isn't it strange? It's amazingly strange. They care about kids until, you know, it's their candidate. I heard there's a phone app that will help you direct the signal to the nearest tower. Rigged 2020. Don't take DNC word if they say it. It's not. You know, it's funny. I think a lot of people are going to be paying a heavy attention to that primary, knowing that the DNC rigged the last one. I honestly do. Now, whether they rig it again or not, that's a separate conversation. Would they hit Bernie Sanders in the knees if they try? Yeah, of course. You're going to see all these advertisements and media and all this stuff. They're going to be hitting this guy in the knees like nobody's business. Chomsky has exposed the private sector getting access to the technology developed at MIT. Civil disobedience. Chomsky is awesome. If you like Chomsky, look at Howard Zinn also. Look at his People's History of America, and look at his lectures. His lectures are amazing. His lectures are amazing. A Yappa. Peace, Jamal. It's been a while. What's happening, Yappa? House, correct script. Pissgate is really stupid. Some from Alex Jones' diseased mind. Kamala, we can release prisoners early because we need workers. Harris can't win anywhere. Ryan, I am not voting for her ass. Did you see her record in California? She was going with this idea of civil forfeit assetures. What that means, that's a political term for stealing people's property, that you're giving these maniac cops the ability to steal property from human beings, from other human beings in their society. That's fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. And they're going to put that woman up as a likely contender. Say she's working around to get the money in order to, you know, get Hillary backing and all this other stuff. Those people need to lose. This is what I would agree with you on. I do want the Democratic Party to win the House and the Senate because I need a Bulworth against whatever Trump is going to do. I need a Bulworth. Donald Trump is a fucking maniac. I need a Bulworth. What I do want, however, is them taking the task in 2020 where there is the potential to get radical shift in what we are as a country. That's what I want. Fundamentally, that's what I want. Meaning, the right is not going to go along with any of Sanders' agenda. The left can be beat into shape, if that makes sense. You can scare the shit out of the Democrats in order to force them to contend. And if you have other groups like Our Revolution and you have other groups that are building up in order to put pressure on the political apparatus to behave in that way, it's doable. It's doable. This is our moment. That's what I think. I'm excited because I think this is our moment. It's just having to live through this shit for the next 3 years. Have no doubt, this is an interregnum. We're living through an interregnum. People never know what that stuff is until they actually look back and see it. This is an interregnum. This is a change. This is a fundamental change in the tenor of this country, or the potential for a fundamental change. You can look back at this video. You can mark this shit in stone. I would live by it. But Look, people take issue with Sanders sometimes, and fair enough. Fair enough. There are things that I wish he would have been stronger on. There are things I wish he would have pushed. Going back to my argument that people are people, I have no expectation of Sanders beyond being a human being. Yes, there are going to be things that I disagree with and everything else. What is the totality of a person? And if you know that you can find things from each particular individual in any particular situation that you yourself can come up with, that you yourself disagree with, then what does the disagreement matter if you can find this for everybody? Disagreement just becomes this ubiquitous thing. What is the totality of the person trying to accomplish? And are you on board with what that particular thing is, even if you believe that person showed weakness in a particular sector or in a particular moment? Can what you think of as weakness just be disagreement because you don't have the context from their particular standpoint? I don't mind defending Sanders. I've said before, bring me your champion of who you want to say that Sanders is not the person that you should vote for. I would have that conversation. And I would win that conversation. Kurd, what is this? What is this? What is this? Kurd 55. Thanks, man. You didn't put a message, but I appreciate the donation. I appreciate the donation. How come nobody cares that there's proof Flynn colluded with Israel? Skip Rock, I don't know. I don't know. Nobody brings it up. Nobody brings it up. Nobody brings up collusion between the United States or Trump and Russia or Trump and Israel. They don't bring it up. They don't bring it up at all. It is easier to castigate Russia because there's a history of castigating Russia. And you also must understand that from the standpoint of the left, castigating Russia has this Cold War mentality, this kind of, but it's imperfect right now. It doesn't work. During the time where you had the Soviet Union, you had this other competing economic system that you can castigate people by. Oh, you've been a commie, you've been a commie, you've been a commie, you're like that Soviet Union over there, you're being a commie. The truth is, the Soviet Union wasn't a communist country, it was a state government or state capitalistic country, if that makes sense. They just turned the means of production to government, not necessarily to the individuals, and they sold those things in order to get cash for the society to run. But it wasn't communism. The communism thing was an advertisement in the same way that the United States advertises freedom and justice. You know, it's like we're freedom and justice and all this other stuff. Do you honestly believe that we have 5% of the world's population and 25% of that population in our prisons? Can you honestly make this case that we are the land of freedom and justice? We have more people in our gulags than China. China is 3 times our population. Freedom and justice for all. Freedom and justice. You're living in a police state. Freedom and justice for all. A cop can take your property, a cop can shoot you in the face, and that cop will likely get off. Freedom and justice for all. State capitalism. Communism is something different. Communism is something different. I mean, when you look into what they're talking about and all this other stuff, when you get into what's the guy's name? It's not Marx. It's somebody else before Marx. I can't think of the name. There's a guy before Marx that wrote Manifesto. But when you get into that stuff, I mean, it's A, it's fascinating. B, you realize that everything that you were ever taught was wrong. That's the biggest realization. And that's more of the flooring realization where you think to yourself, God damn it, what else do I believe that's true, that's not right? And you realize that a lot of the stuff that you encountered growing up was just propaganda. Like this kind of Red Scare mentality. This doesn't work right now, though. There is no Soviet Union communistic country with a competing economic model that you're compared against in this way. So going with Russia and trying to Red Scare, you don't have that impact that it has on the left in the way that it had on the left during the McCarthy time. You can't pull the shit twice. This shit doesn't work. And the public is not really buying it. So they can use identity and everything else all they want. It's not necessarily taking. Captain Obvious. Israel's a damn neocon government that has captured our government to a point that collusion is mandatory. What a scam. Captain Obvious, I agree. I agree. Stephanie, Lenin or Trotsky? So I haven't heard Trotsky's thing. I've read Lenin's thing. The Understanding State, I think it was called. Understanding State, something like that. It's fascinating. Like, he wrote that shit on the run. And as you're going through it, and don't get me wrong, this is not like praise for Lenin. So it's, when you put it this way, when you read that book and you're going through it and you're listening to his analysis of how state functions and how power functions and all this other stuff, And you think to yourself, yeah, he's right on a lot of this. Like, he's mentally prescient when he's having this conversation, like 50, 60, 100 years ago. It's amazing. I haven't read Trotsky's book. Trotsky wrote the manifesto. Jeffrey Pearson. Yeah. Oh, I see. I haven't read Trotsky's. No, I read his the argument on state. It was some Chris Hedges mention, and from Chris Hedges, I was like, well, let me look this up. And I was able to, I listened to the audiobook, the entirety of the audiobook, and you're just sitting there like, wow, this guy's right. He's right. He's right. On this, he's right. But then you get into this tricky situation about what do you do about the current state of government and how you change that government. And for this, listening to the arguments made in Britain is a little bit easier than the arguments made in America. Because you have like full-on social workers parties. These guys who are these they're fucking awesome to listen to because they're these radical revolutionaries. And I think to myself, how many people are listening to this? Like, are they raging out to themselves? I think they're raging out to themselves, if I'm being honest. But then you have these elements in the Labour Party that are socialists, radical socialists, and are heavy behind the Jeremy Corbyn thing. And so it's interesting to see the conversation between the radical socialists who are considered to be reformers and the full-on socialists who are considered to be the radicals. It's fucking amazing to see the balance between those things. When I have conversations with certain people, I find myself to be in the same predicament. All of this stuff focuses on the spectrum. There are times where I have people who are Democrats who think I am losing my goddamn mind, where I am in this burn it down camp. And because I'm in the burn it down camp, because I want to burn it down, and because we need something better, something else, and something that represents real interests, they think I'm insane. You have this other camp who is, I believe, is massively impractical in the way that it's like they want a certain level of purity. And it's like, I'm going to stand here with my thumb in my ass until I get this exact specific thing that I want. Otherwise, I'm not doing squat. And it's like, there is no game of chess. There is nothing in reality that functions in that way. And people are not going to have this glorious revolution where they just get up from their chairs and throw their laptops down and run to their local garden store and pick up their pitchforks and then run to the post office. That's not happening. It's not happening. It's not that incremental change is awesome. The point is, what is the structure that you have to get you from point A to point B? And is that structure cohesive enough to get you to that point? I mean, even if it moves the ball forward, do you have the capacity to get that structure to change in a way that continues to push you in a direction? Society is not going to take massive jumps unless those societies are massively upheaved. And I don't mean a massive jump like Medicare for all. Medicare for all is not a massive fucking jump. Making sure that everybody has their college is not a massive jump. Getting rid of cash will be a massive jump. Massive jumps don't happen. But you can take substantive change, real change, to support particular interests and particular factions that try to make your society function more in a way that raises people as opposed to profits. You gotta right the ship. You gotta right the ship. Yeah. So what is your take on the Justice Democrat issue? Peaceman 33. I gave my take earlier. To sum it up, I'll sum it up. People are people. That's my summary. People are people. Human beings say things that other human beings are not necessarily going to like. There is no way to get away from it. And those things function within a spectrum. That's what I think. Like back in the 50s, somebody could call me a nigger and that would be perfectly okay. Somebody can call women, I don't know, bitch or something like that, and that would be okay. Oh, would it? I don't know if those would have been okay. The argument and the range, back during that time, people would be like, hey, you shouldn't call that person a nigger. And it's like, you're getting across, you're infecting my speech. You're trying to police my speech. You're trying to police my free speech. You're being a social justice warrior. And they were being a social justice warrior because they needed to be a social justice warrior. Your free speech was inhibiting somebody else's ability to just fucking live. You move the playing field. The spectrum's still there, but where we are on that spectrum, meaning society itself, is like a spectrum within a spectrum. It changes. Our spectrum has moved further to the left, and for the better. I don't want to have a conversation where somebody is arguing whether rape is an acceptable thing. I don't want that fucking conversation. So I'm glad that the society has moved to this direction. But let's be honest, there are limits. You can't get to the point where people can't be who they are. So I don't necessarily think it's crazy for Cenk Uygur to have this conversation where he's putting this out in the air. I think the conversation is slightly weird. But do men talk in this way? 3 men having a conversation. Do men talk in this way? Are we shocked to see that men talk in this way? does it in any way adversely affect somebody else, the men have these type of conversations? My argument is that it doesn't. Like, this is not putting somebody down. This is not him directing this or being abusive or anything else. I don't. So I understand him being in the Democratic, the Democratic Party. I understand him being on the left. And I think they understand that there's a social justice warrior element on the left that is antagonistic to people saying anything that in any way offends their sensibilities on what they believe that people should be. Full well missing the point that there is no definitive within regards to the spectrum. He's talking about improbable butts and improbable boobs. The racist stuff was too much. I don't like the racist stuff. I think that adversely affects. I think that you're putting people down when you're saying something like that. So I'm against it. I'm against it for this humanistic reason of, as a human being, I don't want somebody putting me down. You know, treat people the way you want to be treated. The teenager stuff, again, same thing. That's too much. But it's like, too much to what effect? And what do you do about something that's too much? And does each and every person in their life, is there something that they would be ashamed of? I have to be honest. I said something when I was a teenager that to this day I'm ashamed of. Can it be brought out and used against me? Yes. Will people look at that and say, this is the totality of who this person is, and these random interactions that I had with this person backs up that particular thing that this particular person said? Yes. Any human being can be done. That can be done to any human being. So this doesn't necessarily shock me. I think the SJWs on this, I'm sorry, man, you are necessary from the standpoint of making sure that people aren't sexist, racist, and all this other stuff. You're mandatory. You're necessary. But there are limits. There are limits. You're treading on the limits. You're massively treading on the limits. Even a teenager comment is fucked up, but constructed in a way that isn't criminal. Still gross, though. Adora Pryor, yeah, agreed. The teenager thing is rough to hear, yeah. This is a little rough to hear. It is a little rough to hear. Hakir Chi, agreed. I think the point of his possibly having a bad touch stories is valid. She might be a better option for them, but her being young in a political career might hurt her. Let's see. Jamal, if that's the case, make sure you don't have blogs with those comments recorded for posterity. No, I don't have any comments like that. I don't have any comments like that. I don't have any comments like that. But if I did have a comment like that, like if it was a situation where I had a comment where I was saying something crazy, my perspective on this has never changed. Like, I expect human beings to be human beings. I expect human beings to say things that other human beings may not necessarily like. The fact that you may not like something is not the definitive of whether something is right or wrong. There is no such thing as right or wrong. There are things that people get offended by or not get offended by. But there is no definitive. This is what I'm getting at. Sometimes on the left, people accept certain things as being the definitive thing. There is no definitive in this spectrum. Him talking about boobs and butts and everything else is not being abusive to any human being. My sensibilities haven't been triggered on this. Like, there hasn't been something that trespassed into this thing of Cenk Uygur is putting somebody down outside of the Redskin thing. Outside of the Redskin thing. And even then, do you hold people accountable for something that took place 20 years ago? I mean, shit, man. I just don't, this seems to be an impossible standard. That's what I'm getting at. The standard seems to be impossible. Justice Democrat is doomed. The people they charge is full-blown SJWs. This is just one of their tweets. The Unabomber was right about everything except for mailing people bombs. He should have sent cookies with copies of the previous actions. That's funny. That's funny. I'm not triggered about the butt and boob comment. Yeah, me either. That's more funny. That's more funny. Pacman Mason, I respect your opinion on this issue because if the standard is set this high, I can see Phil DeFranco getting bashed for the racist joke he made when he was in his 20s. Yeah. It just seems to be an impossible standard. I think when I look at stuff like this and I see people being outraged, my first question is always, what does it mean to be a person? And do people express this stuff? And should we continuously get outraged over things that people express? Like, I can see, oh, I don't like that comment. Okay, fair enough. I think that comment is offensive because it puts down XYZ. I can even see that. I can see society having a pressure against people saying things that are offensive and racist and bigoted and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, come on. Let's be adults. Let's be adults. It's getting the trend up to dig up past on someone to kill their ability to succeed in life when that someone has pissed a person off nowadays. That is totally wrong. Agreed. Are you the same person you were 20 years ago? Are you? That is the operative question. Understand, though, the right wing or the left, I mean Democrats, and I don't consider them the left, I'm just mean the faux left. Let's call them the faux left. Put out this stuff, potentially, in order to gut what they consider to be competition. That's what I think this is. You can call me a conspiracy theorist. I wouldn't necessarily be shocked by it. Vitamin, LOL, Jamal with the come on man argument. Yeah, this is come on man. Come on dog. Come on. Come on. Yeah, that's my argument. Rebel Cage right? No, I am not the same person as I was ever 10 years ago. I am not the same person I was 5 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. My opinions change. I mean, you can look at my videos and see my opinions change depending on what's taking place. I get new information and be like, or hell, maybe not even new information. I may think of it in a different way. Like, yeah, yeah, that person is right. I understand where they're coming from. I may change my opinion on it based on some other information or anything else. People change. And let's be honest. Being conservative has a cultural element associated with being a conservative. Meaning the shit that he says as a conservative, that's not shocking to me. That's not shocking to me. And honestly, that's not shocking to me even from a lefty if it was a guy. That wouldn't be shocking to me at all. It's easy to judge when we have lived very little life. Let's see people opinions when they are 35. Terry Robinson agreed. Agreed. They're going after the guy without any context. Agreed. Would hate for my past to be dug up just to have used as a weapon against me. Fuck that. Nobody has the right to do that. Agreed. Agreed. LB Cenk denies Armenian low interest loans. All right. That part I dislike. That part I did dislike. And maybe this is my own bias. The Armenian genocide thing. The pretending as if the Armenian genocide didn't take place. And then calling yourself the Young Turks. Just, oh, man. That's gross. That part is gross. You should not have used that name. I'm sorry. You should not have used that name. That is an atrocious naming. Changing opinions with new information is not changing a person. Have your core values changed? Genuinely, no, they haven't. That's my point. My basis, the thing I put my stake in the ground on is humanistic values. What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be a human being? As the information changes, the information is purely relative to my value system. That's why my opinions may change. It hasn't been a value system change. It would be one thing if simply made these comments. It's another thing to have complete hypocritic and condemn people for using the same thing said 18 years ago when you have yourself just said it's bad. Garnham, I agree, man. It's just... Let me ask you this. Is there anything in your past that you regret? The answer for everybody is yes. Of course there are going to be things where you're like, I shouldn't have said or I shouldn't have done. So, yes. Going with this idea of, is there something in your past that you regret? As you get older and as you get to the point of saying, you know what? I don't like the fact that I did that. I've changed my opinion on this, and now I'm going after this particular opinion. And you're saying that they can't go after positions that they think are wrong because they said something in their past that was wrong themselves. Come on, man. It's not. And that's why Cassandra's grifter who never got out of the high school drama mentality. Jenny Lynn, I personally get the feeling that Cenk's... What? I see somebody say a murderer. That Cenk is a creep. He could be. I mean, yeah, he could be. Who knows? This is kind of my thing, though. It's like nobody knows. Merry Christmas, all. Curious that we're all glued to the screen watching Jamal. Does that indicate something good about us or something concerning? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you define good. What do you mean by good? What does it mean to be good? So you're saying that Cenk should not be ashamed of being Turkish? No, no, no. That's not what I'm saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. D. Scully. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm saying, I don't know if you know the history of the Young Turks. There was the Armenian genocide, if I'm not mistaken, in World War I, where all these Armenians were essentially taken out of the country, but they were essentially murdered, a lot of them. I mean, scores of these people were murdered. The group that did this was named the Young Turks. They were the ones who upheaved the establishment and took this particular order on. Using the Young Turks, knowing full well that that has association with an Armenian genocide, then at the same token, turning around and denying that that Armenian genocide took place. It's problematic. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that he should be, He should be ashamed of being Turkish any more than Americans should be ashamed of being Americans for murdering the Indians. I'm just saying the reality of the situation. There's a difference. Yeah, the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. I don't think they thought the name Young Turks thought it was another example of incompetence. It is a little weird for Anna to be Armenian, sitting under the banner of Young Turks. Now, here's the thing, though. I don't invest any feelings in that, if that makes sense. Like, it's what I wish, what I honestly wish. Oh, get up, Picard. There are 4 lights. There are 4 lights. What I honestly wish, that human beings would look at this stuff and say, okay, people say things that I don't like sometimes. People say things I don't like sometimes. People say things I don't agree with. And accept that there is a gray area in regards to where things are on that spectrum and figuring out, I may not like this, but is this something that's adversely affecting me? Is it offensive to me? Is it offensive to other people? Is it putting other people down? And interrogating, what does it mean to be offended in the first place? What does it mean? Something was said that ran concurrent or ran in opposition to what I myself believe of the world to be. And that person looks at it and says, what I believe the world to be is effectively clear and what the world is. There is no gray area. This is what the world is. That person is fundamentally wrong because that person just has a point of view of what the world is. What he said may be offensive to somebody. The question is always, should the person be offended? There are always going to be things that offend somebody. Always. There is nothing that you can say. I can say the most tepid of videos, and somebody would give my video a downvote, being completely pissed off that I said something immensely tepid. Knowing that, meaning anything that you say for the most part is going to be taken a particular way, we have to accept that there are ranges in regards to what should be offensive and not. If you're calling me something that is putting me down, then yeah, you're being somewhat offensive. At least to me, you are anyway. Somebody else may say that's perfectly okay conversation. I don't necessarily think so. It's rubbing against what it means for me to be a human being. It's him talking about improbable boobs and butts, treading on what somebody means to be a human being. Him not being able to say it to some degree is treading on what it means to be a human being. But stopping him from saying, I mean, you know, it's like, he's a guy, he's in his 30s, he's running around being a guy in their 20s and 30s. That's his lifestyle. That's been a lot of people's lifestyle. I don't know the issue. I don't know the issue here. So, oh, my stream is doing weird things. That's it. We've been on for over an hour. And this one, we're just running our mouth. Jamal, Mark Blythe is a Trekkie. Was talking economics in a video where you referenced the same episode. There are 4 lights. Oh, that's nice. I like Mark. Yeah, I like Blythe. Blythe is fucking amazing. He's fucking amazing. I love him. I love it. Being a guy, Jenny Lynn. Yeah, what I mean is your society. Yeah, being a guy. I'll stand by that. Well, what I mean is your gender roles. There's a societal pressure on people to behave a particular way. It just is. Let's be honest. Like, everything in your particular society pushes guys to act a particular way and pushes women to act a particular way. You're socialized to behave a particular way, whether you realize it or not. The way you walk, the way you talk, your inflection, the things that you say, the comments that you make, the way that you feel, the way that you act. There's an aspect of you that's you, but a lot of that stuff is you being programmed by the society and the space that's around you. Movies that you watch where a guy is going after a girl and he's in love with the girl and the girl tells him no 100 times and finally she falls in love with him. What do you think that's communicating to the men in your particular society? Where the guy gets caught with the girl in the room and dad walks in and dad is like, oh, he's shocked by this and he walks out and be like, that's my boy. That's my boy. If your dad caught his daughter doing that, he would kill the guy. Let's be honest. These are elements of your society where your society programs these things and says these things are acceptable and these things are normal for guys to behave. Why would you expect men to behave in any other way? It's like you ask them to run contrary to the trends of that particular society. Frank Sinatra has a song, Wives Should Always Be Lovers Too. And in the song, he has this awesome line where he says, in mind, the line is immensely sexist, so don't get me wrong, but I'm just using it to make a point. He says, day after day, there are girls at the office, and men will always be men. I love that line. I love that line. God damn it, I love that line. This is purely during the Mad Men age where Frank Sinatra is saying this. His point is, look, your guy is going to go out, and that guy may have a roving eye because men are just that way. And because men are just that way, wives need to make sure that what's at home is something that that guy loves. It's like, meet him at home when he gets in, that type of stuff. This kind of, this 1940s and 50s man's man type of thing. I don't have that thought. I don't think men are just men just because men are men. I think this is a societal program. I think societal pressure for men to behave a particular way. So men behave in the way society tells them to behave. They try to put constraints on it from a social standpoint of, well, wait a minute, you can't behave this way if you're going to be sexist or racist or bigoted or whatever to some other person. So you have these restraints in society to try to pull behavior back from that particular branch. But let's not pretend that this is, guys don't talk this way and guys don't act this way. And let's not pretend that women don't talk and act this way. Let's not pretend that. Let's not pretend that at all. Women do behave in this way also. Civil disobedience. I don't act that way. I understand you don't act that way, but we're talking about the totality of men. Mr. X, John Wayne. Yeah, John Wayne. Yeah. Hello, jerk. That's funny. Ha, I knew he wasn't going to stop. I should have taken the bets. Very thoughtful of you, Skip. What did Skip say? What did Skip say? Skip said something. I told my boss that I would never sexually harass women at work because I always masturbate before I leave the house. That's a good policy, Skip. That's a good policy. My wife. That's a good policy. That is a good policy. Oh my God, women, trust me, can be very bad. Yes, women can be, it's bad. Like, I don't understand this thing where people pretend that this is just men. Have you seen women at strip clubs? Oh my God. They're animals. They're animals. It's like, oh, this guy is gyrating in front of me. I'm going to grab his cock. Yeah, man, women can be rough. Women can be rough. That's my girl. Invite the whole football team over, honey. Oh, that's funny. Jamal disses Star Trek Voyager, so YouTube must block him down. Down with Jamal. I don't diss Star Trek Voyager. What are you talking about? I love Voyager. I love Voyager. Voyager, I love that show. I make the argument. Somebody asked me about Janeway being a captain. I just said she did things in that captain's chair that I don't think the other captains would have done. That's all. I would have never let that doctor go on his own. The doctor talking he wants to sing opera because he fell in love with somebody on the planet. I would have decapitated his program and had his ass whistling Dixie. Like, fuck that. Fuck that. The doctor isn't going anywhere. D. Scully, JT, you need to associate the genocide with him constantly. It's significant. He has said a million times he didn't know about the connection. There's a famous song with the name Most Think That. D. Scully. No, that's fair, D. Scully. That's fair. I don't fully associate it with it all the time. It just, I guess my feeling is, and you're right. You're right. You're right. I shouldn't associate it with it all the time. That's fair. But you know, when Rick Perry came up with the thing, Nigga Head Ranch, did they give him a pass on that? Look, all I'm saying, and hear my point. The only point I'm making on this is, and I think this is a point that a lot of people make and get annoyed with, and I suspect that some of the arguments that people make hitting at this particular one is from the same vein. If a conservative had something named Nigga Head Ranch, if a conservative had something that was pretty gross and over the top, like if there was a school called, you know, Robert E. Lee Middle School, something like that, which we do have those schools. I'm trying to think of something that's more dastardly, some kind of Klansman. Are you telling me that TYT would just let that go? I guess this, and maybe this is me being unfair. This is me being SJW. Yeah, maybe this is me being SJW. I understand the belief is supposed to be that Cenk didn't know anything about it as a Turkish person. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Are you telling me that being Turkish, he didn't know anything about the history of the Young Turks? That just seems a little weird to me. But okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But D. Scully, I take your point. It's a fair point. I was pressured into talking to women by family members. I am really shy. I was basically labeled gay. I don't talk with anyone in my family to this day over the ordeal. D. Scully, it is you being unfair. I don't think I'm being unfair. I don't know how I'm being unfair on this. I take your point. Don't get me wrong. I take your point being unfair. I take your point. But I don't know if I'm being unfair on this. I don't think I'm being unfair. Keep it up, skip money, get money, homie, get money. Most people didn't know about it. Armenians didn't even know about it. These Scully, are you telling me that the Armenians... Okay, Scully, I take your point. I'll look it up. I'll be fair. I'll look it up. I'll see when it was revealed. I don't agree that most Armenians or most Turks didn't know about it. I would imagine it's one of those things in Turkey that they talked about and they argued and complained about and they said they didn't believe in. And they were getting very upset when anybody brought up this point about a genocide. So, yeah, be fair. Ultimately, this was, you're trying to make this argument that they did not know, that Turks did not know about the Armenian genocide. And I'm saying that is not a fair point. Then why was Turkey against it? Why was Turkey always against people talking about it, if that was the case? If you're trying to make this argument that nobody knew, then if nobody knew, it would never have been a point of conversation. It was a point of conversation for years. So come on. But fair enough. We're all doomed. If you're a she, Jamal, please tell me that's not true. If I'm a she, what does it matter if I'm a she? What does it matter? What does it matter? Garnome, that nigga hair red shit was absurd. It's not like Perry named the place, although someone should have renamed it long ago. This is my point. This is my point. This is my point. They would have went after him for that, though. They would have went after him. They used it as a hit job. Hitler even said it would carry out the genocide successfully because nobody is talking about the Armenian genocide. Just so I'm clear, though, D. Scully, you're making this point that me saying Young Turks and me connecting it with the Armenian genocide, which I don't do every time I mention it, by the way. I think I've mentioned it twice. Twice in 2 videos. 3, mostly. 3 total. I don't connect it all the time. But you're trying to say that because I'm connecting the Young Turks with the Armenian genocide, that I am wrong to connect that, to make those 2 connections. Because you're saying that Cenk Uygur didn't know about the Armenian genocide, even though Cenk Uygur wrote an article saying that the Armenian genocide never took place. Come on. Be fair. Be fair. Be very fair on this. Be fair. I made the connection in these 2 videos, yes. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're making this case that he didn't know about it, then why did he write an article about it? Explain it to me. I need you to explain it to me. I'm saying your argument doesn't hold true. He understood it because he wrote an article about it. There's historic, there's historical data associated with it. The only reason I knew that he denied it was because I saw the article for it. I read the article for it. Come on. Come on. If he wrote an article for it, which he did, meaning he knew about the name of it, and he continued to keep the name of it, fair enough. He's looking at it as something else. He doesn't necessarily want to own the idea that the Armenian genocide took place, so he just looked at the positive aspects of the Young Turks, which there were positive aspects aside from the genocide, and he said, I'm going to go with this particular organization's name because of what this organization represents. From the context of change. Fair enough. That is what took place. But can we just not pretend that the Armenian genocide didn't take place or that he didn't know about the Armenian genocide when he used the name? And being Turkish, like most Turkish, they try to ignore the fact that that took place, meaning they don't necessarily own up to the fact that it happened. So being a Turkish guy, he just went along with the name, ignoring the bad parts. Are you telling me that that's not most likely true? Is that your case? Is that the argument that you're making, Scully? Explain it to me. Explain it to me. I don't take shots at him for that. I make this point that from his standpoint, I've seen him go after people with odd names or things that should be changed because of the context associated with those things. What is their position on the statues that are all throughout the United States? I mean, should they remove the Robert E. Lee statues from monuments? Should they remove the statues all throughout the South? Should they do that? What is the position of the Young Turks on that? If any of those videos come out saying they should change the name of the Young Turks, they should change the name of the Redskins, they should change the name of any of these things, then how on earth can they make the argument that any of these people should change their names while keeping the same name of a group that committed a genocide? Come on, be honest. Be fair. Shit, man. I don't give them shit about it all the time, but when something comes up where people are being outraged over, and it's like you guys are being outraged over guy talk or stuff that, the way people or human beings talk in general, meaning if women are to women or men are to men and they just don't necessarily say that stuff between each other, you're lying to each other, which is the reality of it. The fact that they don't say it to the other person is, for the most part, the lie. The conversations that people have to themselves or to other people is the actual person. That's the actual honesty of it all. the societal framework, the cultural thing that's trying to force people to conform, like you're in some kind of religious country. It's the same thing here. It's just cultural pressure, trying to get people to conform their language. He knew Jamal. He's just incompetent, and I don't think he named it after the actual Young Turks. He meant the vernacular sense. I didn't know there was another vernacular sense associated with it, if I'm being honest. Maybe that's my own incompetence. I only knew it as the Young Turks. So fair enough. Fair enough. GMO, I guess it's your point of view that the young... come back. I guess it's your point of view that the name TYT with bad intentions as they have... As he's named TYT with bad intentions, as he says others are bad intended. No, it's not that. It's not that. I don't think that. I don't... These conversations are difficult to have, man, because there's no way to get across what you yourself feel or think about a particular thing. And words are often just inadequate to get that stuff across. I don't think he started with bad intentions. I've said it before. I think what Cenk is trying to do is, I think his intentions are earnest. I think he wants to push the country in a progressive direction. I think he wanted this kind of Herculean, you know, I'm going to board the ship and I'm going to do it alone, and this is TYT and here my wolf pack and all this other stuff. I think that's where that came from. This I don't want to stand pat and do nothing, and et cetera, et cetera. That's what I think it came from. I don't think his intentions were bad. So no, I don't. I don't look at. I remove integrity from conversations. I remove, particularly when we're talking about politics, and I try to look at what the person wants, meaning what are they trying to accomplish, and what are the tools they have at their disposal to accomplish those things. Some of those tools can be things that they can do in order to get additional tools based on the tools that they currently have. I honestly think that from a cultural standpoint, Turkey doesn't like this idea of being associated with the genocide. America pretends as if the genocide of the Native American population didn't take place. I would imagine Turkey is the same way. They pretend it doesn't take place. And when people try to pin it on them, they don't like this idea of being pinned on. Cenk probably grew up in the same vein. I don't see, you know, this is a cultural thing. He's just in a different country. And as that cultural thing is taking place, he considered the Young Turks as being this disruptive, positive force in Turkey because he didn't necessarily accept the Armenian genocide. This is what I'm getting at. It wasn't bad intentions any more than you being cultured a particular way is bad intentions. Your society indoctrinates you in a particular way. The way you talk, walk, act, things that you eat, the things that you say, the inflection of your voice, all of those things. Those things are random and cultural. Those things can be anything for the most part. He grew up in this particular vein. The difference is, however, when you're in a different country and that lens doesn't exist in the same way that lens existed in your country and people look at this, I don't think he started with bad intentions. I think from the cultural norm that he was going by, this was perfectly okay because the other thing didn't take place from his standpoint. That's what I think. It had nothing to do with bad intentions. Nothing to do. I don't assume bad intentions in this process. Jenny Lynn, stop saying everybody speaks like that. That's not what I meant, Jenny. I think, and if we're being honest, when guys or women are amongst themselves, they talk that way. Come on. Trying to act like people aren't people. Correct, Terry. I also mean young rebel to speak. Whoever just subscribed to me here, thanks. Oh, Stephanie, that's funny. Jeannie, it's a great song, right? My guess is Cenk had a positive connection to his identity. Yes, agreed. Agree with that. And the song was playing during the childhood. Most people know little about the genocide. D. Scully, oh man, you're being immensely, you're giving a massive amount of latitude on this. I have to be honest. You may think I'm being overly critical, but you're giving a massive amount of latitude. And I know those things are relative to one another, so I know it's a spectrum, and I know I can't necessarily say I'm completely right and you're completely wrong. But the thing, the tangible thing that you can nail down into physical matter reality about right or wrong in this is whether he knew about it or not. And if he knew about it or not, if he knew it, and his standard for everybody else has been, you should change the name. Let's say the Redskins. Let's say the Washington Redskins. If the standard of the Young Turks was the Redskins to change their names, how can you hold that standard with the Redskins to change their names after the genocide and the racism and all this other stuff that was committed by this country to the Redskins? How can you make that case and keep the Young Turks? That's my case. That's my argument. It's not even that I wanted to get into this back and forth, but that is my argument that I make on this. It's holding somebody to the standard that they themselves set. Nobody's perfect, but come on. I don't even, and I gotta be honest, it's not that I even fully care about this particular conversation, but D. Scully, if you're gonna hold that position, well, this is my position on it. I will be honest. I am around so many people. Most people I've been around, both men and women, talk dirty if the mood strikes. Yes. I don't understand these prudish people who don't have these type of conversations. You're missing out in life. You're missing out. Sexist sounds like Hillary bot. The progressive voice. I think TYT should change their name. Maybe. Fair enough. It's similar standard. Very least good point. Yes, that's all I'm getting at. Look, I am not D. Scully. The funny point is you pulled me into this particular point because I think you wanted to defend TYT. I am not taking shots at the organization. If you've noticed, my argument here has been more on the side of I think this is overblown. That's been my argument. I have no bias with regards to either dislike or like TYT. Everybody has biases. My bias comes from the context of you shouldn't have voted for Hillary Clinton. So it's like when I think about that, I need to put that into a point. I need to bake that into the cake. But even with that particular bias of, you know, should have voted for Hillary Clinton, even with that bias of, I don't like this idea of a media organization fused to a political organization, I still take the position that this is a no story. This is a nonsense story. It's a nonsense story. It's nothing. It's 18 years ago, and the guy says something that whether he believed it or not, yeah, I think this is a nonsense story, personally. Talking dirty is not the same as disrespect and sexism. Jenny Lynn, no, that's true. That's true. But what does it mean by sexism? What does that mean? What does that mean? What does it mean? And talking dirty is the same as sexism, depending on the context. You can, honestly, somebody could say something, you could say that person's talking dirty, somebody else will say, oh, he's being sexist. You're not the definitive. That's my point. You're not the definitive. D. Scully, JT, I have no interest in defending TYT. My problem is that you seem to be associating Cenk personally with the genocide every time you bring him up. That sounds racist. How on earth am I? No, come on. Come on. Come on. Yeah, no, that's not taking place. If that's your position, you need to put a little evidence to that. That's not taking place. You decided to bring up this idea of Cenk, of me making the association between TYT and Armenian genocide. I make the association because association historically exists. If you ask me why do I bring Cenk into it, it's because we're having a story right now about Cenk Uygur. And Cenk Uygur was the person who started TYT. And you seem to think that it's completely coincidental that they named the organization the Young Turks with the person who's Turkish. It has nothing to do with his race. It has nothing to do with him at all. It has everything to do with the genocide. And it has everything to do with the name of the organization and the person who started it. That racist to name something that's fucking true. Come on. D. Scully, that makes no sense. No, it doesn't make any sense. Stephanie Chateau, pay attention to me, Jamal. Okay, Stephanie, I'm paying attention to you. Racism, sexism, interfering, supporting, inferiority with Cenk's comments, but still. I will start nothing. I will start nothing. I will start noting every time because fair enough. When I say it, mention it. When I say it, mention it. But come on, be honest. That in no way is racist for me to nail down this idea that TYT had a genocide or the Young Turks is representative of a genocide. It's like, come on, be honest. Be honest. I'm not taking shots at Cenk Uygur at all. If anything, this video is saying the attacks on him in this case are fucking ridiculous. It's like, how are you taking a piss out of me over something like this? I haven't tried to fish fry, but I love their lemon broccoli biscuits, fried shrimp, and cheese hash. Oh, you guys are talking about something to eat. All right. It is, let's see. Excellent question. Jamal's phrase, nice ass, sexist, or what? No, it's not. This is my point. What does those things mean? Jenny Lynn, I take your point, but take my point also. This stuff is not, you're not a definitive. I'm sorry. Like, each person can't create their own context about what's sexist or not. Yes, you can personally, but certainly you need to understand that people are different and other people are going to have that different context. A woman telling me nice ass, which I don't have a nice ass, but a woman saying nice ass to me, it's not overtly offensive to me, even though I can understand it being somewhat offensive to another woman who's walking by and a guy says it. So I get that part. Somebody saying, hey, you look nice today, it's not sexist. I'm sorry, it's not sexist. There's no context where you can honestly say somebody saying, hey, you look nice today, that's sexist. That stuff functions in ranges. You're not the definitive. That's my point. That's my point. People are different. D. Scully is suffering from confirmation bias, overly sensitive dimensions of Cenk genocide, not recalling Cenk's mention. Yes, I know. I've mentioned Cenk. I've mentioned TYT multiple occasions. I have 3 videos out of like 1,000 where I mentioned Cenk in the genocide. They're like 3, maybe 4, maybe 4, maybe 4. So your point is that he knew about the genocide and couldn't wait to name the organization after it. No, I never said. God damn it, man. This is my point. I never said that. Do you find anywhere where I said that he knew about the genocide and couldn't wait to name his organization about? No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. I would explain one more time. Turkey is more than that. Okay. Well, you still get my point. You still get my point. I'm perfectly right on this. There's no ambiguity in this at all. Dude wrote an article, he named his organization after something that he knew already existed, and at the same token, he on his show would bash other organizations, including the Washington Redskins, for not changing their name, even though he's named after fucking genocide. Now, yes, you can take issue with me saying that, but that is perfectly true. The only reason we're dwelling on it is today because you wanted to take issue with me saying something that was perfectly flat fact true. It's a flat fact. There's no ambiguity in it at all. This is what took place. Some people think dumb shit is sexist. That has nothing to do with the subject at hand. Jenny Land, no, it does. It does. When Hillary Clinton is calling Bernie Sanders sexist, when a bunch of Hillbots come behind him and say Bernie Sanders is being sexist on stage because he asked his wife to step back. Well, now that's the standard for sexist from the Democratic Party and from the SJWs. Certainly you understand that's insane. That's insane, but that is the spectrum to which you're on. You, Jenny Lynn, will look at this and say, well, look, those people are insane. That's not sexist. But there are people out there who actually believe that those particular things are sexist. So where does the line go? You're not, nobody is the definitive on this. There will be things that you would get a lot of people to agree with you to say, okay, fair enough, that's sexist, in which case that particular thing becomes sexist. Or that particular thing becomes racist and everything else. But there's no definitive on this. There's no definitive. I don't want anybody pushing up on somebody at work. I don't want anybody pushing up on somebody in a way that those particular people want. I don't want people behaving towards people in ways that make those people uncomfortable. I don't want, like, it's a lot of things that I don't want. And I find behavior that does any of those things, that deprives a person of their space, to be problematic. If that draws the line of being sexist or racist or you know something against their sexuality, whether it's in the capacity of trying to get a job or just trying to live their lives, I want people to be able to live their life and express themselves in a free and open way. That being said, that free and open way is also going to run contrary to what other people want to live and express in a free and open way, meaning there is no such thing as living in a free and open way with other people around you. Your sensibilities is always going to run up against somebody else's sensibilities. The idea of trying to nail down something as this is definitively X is not the easiest thing to do when you have all these other personalities in the mix who have varying and contrasting opinions and can deal with things, meaning have a greater or lesser tolerance for this stuff. The teenager thing is problematic. I agree with you. I don't like it. It's like growing up to be whores is immensely problematic. I don't really like the term whore for this matter. I think that term is, yeah, I don't like that term in any context. Being used for men or women. It's usually used for women. I don't like the context. Women should be free to have sex with whoever they want. I don't give a shit if people are promiscuous. You're human beings. You're in life. Have your life. Have fun. And I do want people to have a certain latitude in order to express what they say, even if it pisses other people off. The question becomes, at which point does it tread on the line where you're actually devaluing or putting somebody else down with something that you're saying? I think that's the line for me. That's the line for me. So I don't think it's the easiest thing in the world to say this particular thing is so far over the line that, you know, we found this 18 years ago and now we're going to hit this person in the knees in perpetuity for the rest of their life. That can't be it. Gardenome, as far as sexism, Cenk was openly so in the early days of the show. It's part of why Jill Pike left. I saw him do it to Anna on air. It's a climate Anna could sue TYT and they would have to settle. You know, Anna did mention that, by the way, saying in the beginning that there were issues and incidents that came across as sexist. Josh Method's Dwayne Wayne glasses, that sunglasses that flip up and down and have those over his regular lenses. I don't wear things, but I do wear my wife for Christmas bought me a pair of glasses. I have these John Lennon glasses. I fucking love. Jamal, Q is still hotter than Picard or Worf. You're just power hungry. You're just like the power. You just like because he can do any fucking thing. And he can be anybody. I mean, you can say, I need you to be Hugh Jackman today. I need you to be this guy today. I need you to be that guy today. I need you to be this woman today. I need you to be this green alien today. Whatever. It's fucking awesome. Personally, I get insulted when I don't get my improbable butts pinched. Robert Bouquet, right? My wife, as nice as she is, someone sexually harassed me today and grabbed me on the ass. And I was like, just because we're married doesn't mean you can just touch me in any way you want. Being fucking sexist. Jay, if I could, someone to stay on topic, I'll have a Merry Christmas. I know, right? Generally, we're all over the place. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lance Jamal Q. Yeah, Q from Star Trek. She's a Q from Star Trek. I had a woman ask me if I wanted a sexual favor. I was concerned with the possible negative outcomes. I've had women make passes at me that was uncomfortable. I do love powerful men. Yeah, I've had women make passes at me that was uncomfortable. But that was because that's on my own sensibilities, though. That's my own sensibilities. I won't necessarily say she was sexist for doing it, though. And look, don't get me wrong, man. I tend to be more open and free with the way I talk in my conversations. Being overly sensitive, though, about making sure I don't necessarily tread on somebody else, because I have this sick fascination of I want that person to be able to express how that person is. Meaning, I want them to be able to be honest with me in the way that they say things. Being cognizant that I can't necessarily be completely honest in the way that I say things. They'll put those things in a way that the person can receive. I don't like this thing of policing speech. That's all. I don't like policing speech. Cenk, Stephanie too. That's right. Back to judging Cenk. Let's get off topic. That's funny. I like guys who change it up. Well, Q would be able to change it up to pretty much whatever you want. No walking back from if you were giddy as a schoolgirl last night. Oh, I was. I thought the improbable butts thing was funny. But I mentioned last night, even in the video, I kind of made this point of, how can I say this? I have no axe to grind with this. And last night it was me giving the story. It was like, holy shit, I can't believe this took place. And I think even last night I mentioned that the only story that really bugged the shit out of me was the last one, the teenage, the horror one. So yeah, it's not I mean, maybe it's a walk back. I guess last night it was more of a, oh my god, this is the story that took place and these guys are leaving the show. And today, as I was thinking about it, I was reading through, I read through the other stories, I read through the other ones, I read through the ones on the racism, the Redskins, and everything else. And I really started to ask myself, well, it's like, wait a minute, I mean, this was 18 years ago, and was he, A, do people change? And B, can you still hold him to account for stuff that he said so long ago? And if that's so, can anybody live up to that standard? And as I thought through it, I didn't think he could. I've been felt up against my will, no joke. It didn't bother me afterwards, but it's like I was really out of control for the situation. It's different than if I was a 105 girl versus a guy. Gardner, I agree. No, I agree. That's a big fucking difference. I agree. How could a guy report a woman for sexual harassment without being laughed out of the solar system? Civil disobedience again. Agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, when I got the video last night, speech should not be policed, but speech has consequences. Generally, and that I agree with too. Full-throated agreement. Let's see. FTW all day. Yeah, man. As for walking back, this may be a slight walk back. It's just the more I thought about it, I couldn't see the I thought more about it. Last night I had just got the story and just reported the story. But I did think the story was slightly funny. Not to mention, I kept thinking about, it sounds really weird. I kept thinking to myself, HA is going to bathe in their blood. That's what I kept thinking. But no, the story was, it is a mind-blowing thing for lefty media luminaries in this way to get taken down. Yeah, it's just weird. Cardinal, yes, in this case, you can hold Cenk accountable because he has been a hypocrite on the matter. Yeah. But it's like hypocrite to what end? I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, if there's any point. So I would come out here and I would make arguments against, I'll give you an example. I think back over my life, and there is one thing, there are a few things that I wish I would have done, but there's a few things that I wish I didn't do. One of those things was I was listening to a conversation between these guys, and in this conversation, excuse me, I was listening to a conversation between a bunch of people, these guys, and they were ragging on this girl. They were like ragging on her big time. Like, she's busted, she's ugly, she's this and that. And I'm walking down the hallway, and somebody else, another group of girls, were ragging and talking about somebody else. And I heard who they were talking about. I was like, oh yeah, so and so said that she's blah 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 blah, just repeating everything that the person said. And I see this other girl standing to the side that I don't know. The look on her face is etched in my mind. And later on, I find out that chick who was freaked out, that was her. And to this day, this has happened like 30-something years ago, or maybe 20-something years. I feel horrible for it. To this day, I feel horrible for it. If somebody dredged that up and said that this guy said X, could they use that against me, saying he says all this stuff on his show, but when he was 18, 17, 16, 15. When he was 14 years old, he said this. It's like, fuck, man. It's like, if that's the case, everybody is fair game. I really think Justice Democrats needed to separate. Yeah, Tabitha, agreed. Agreed. It's a little dicey. Agreed. Jamil Waters, Tabitha, but what we know about Justice Democrats without them? That's, you know what, that's an interesting point, right? Could they have been affiliated with Justice Democrats without fully being affiliated with Justice Democrats? I want to say yes. I got no problem with you walking it back, but being happy about the shit is what disturbs me. It's fair enough for you to say, I might have been like, holy shit, the story is fucking amazing, what's fucking out there. I don't think I was happy about his failure. In fact, I think I even said, I take no pleasure in any of this. I take no pleasure in the Jordan thing, and I take no pleasure in this. I would say, if you can find any point where I said, this is great, I'm enjoying this. In fact, I think you'll probably see that I've said on multiple occasions, I take no pleasure in this. Hello, Jerk Jamal, you're a monster. I'm sorry, man. I'm a bad guy. HA needs to have a heart attack. That would be nice. FTW all day. FTW, you know what? You're right. If it seems like I was giving that story and I was giddy about that story, you're right. It shouldn't. I was getting the story out. I was recounting the story. And it was kind of, I heard about the story and I put the story up within a few minutes. So I didn't have the chance to fully think about what I personally thought about the story. Fair point. Fair point. The Improbable Butts thing was funny to me. To this day, I think the Improbable Butts thing is hilarious. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. If I was giddy about it, yeah, you're right. If I was giddy about it, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been giddy about the story. I should have just recounted the story. I don't think I was giddy, though. I think my feeling when I was recounting it was, oh my God, Cenk Uygur is being fired from Justice Democrats. I think that was my feeling. That was where it was coming from. And it was like, fuck, that's embarrassing. And then it's, why did he get fired? And you're reading the comments. And the comment I think I focused more so on was the teenage horror thing. Because if I'm being honest, that's the only one that bothered me. It's like, oh, this is brutal. It's brutal. And if I'm not mistaken, in that video, I even kind of made the point that the stuff that they're using is just somewhat of a hatchet job. I said all that. I don't think I've walked back that much. Cenk is a big brown buffalo. Yeah, somebody said that too. John McCarthy. This may seem like a minor point, but why do people keep saying this was 18 years ago? The blog posts were from 2002, 2017. Trump's Access Hollywood tape is from 2005. Well, no, some of the blog posts they're saying was 18 years ago. Oh, you're trying to say that they weren't 18 years ago. I'll look it up. I mean, the stuff that I read was 18 years ago. Gardno, glad TYT is making another hit. Again, profiteers hold us back regardless of the rhetoric they use. They will simply lead us around circles while collecting cash. They'll support everyone versus Trump. Crozet Owls, okay, Sargon. Sargon, who the fuck is Sargon? Skip Rock, John McCarthy, 13 years is the cutoff. It's 13 years. That's the cutoff. That's funny. Skip, you need a big brown buffalo ass, raping metaphorically speaking. You, of course. Ooh. Ooh, that's unpleasant. That's unpleasant. It's almost Christmas. That's unpleasant. That's unpleasant. Sargon. Akkad. What was it? Sargon Akkad. Sargon Akkad. Is that what you're saying? Sargon Akkad. He had his opinion. He had the same opinion. I don't. Sargon Akkad. He had the same opinion. I don't know what his opinion was. Somebody put it in my thing, but I didn't see the thing. I didn't see the video. Some of the stuff used was decades ago. 18 years is farthest back. There are a few more recently, though. The recent ones are just stuff that they're using cognitive bias in order to try to associate. They're looking for anything to kind of fill that gap of this person said and did this. This is what this person is. So now look at all this other stuff we're arranging to come up with a caricature of the person. Any random person, are you telling me that any random person could live through that level of scrutiny? That's all I'm getting at. That is the question I want answered, adorable Pare. What does probable butt and probable boobs mean? Operative word being probable. Also known as Carl Benjamin, Charles Stewart. Kind of impossible. Except social media jail, maybe. He was a Republican back then. Yeah, he was a Republican. And this is my point. Republicans talk this way. I'm sorry. I know they're like laughing at people saying it, but he talks that way. Republicans like to be edgy on this stuff. I want to be able to say what I want to say. I want freedom. Freedom of speech means freedom for me to be racist and sexist. It's like, okay. Atheism Unstoppable also defended Cenk. Atheist Unstoppable. That's funny. That's funny. I love that. I was going up body language, which is actually one of the more dominant communications humans use. Oh, you talking about for me? It might have been. I mean, look, as a human being, I do stories. And as I do stories, I look at it and I give my own opinion on what those things are and what those things mean from a wider context. Sometimes there is no wider context. Sometimes the story is just a story. What I've realized in pursuit of doing this is that people build their audience with the stories that they do. In building their audience, they try to pull all of these, very disparate people in their own particular groups into their own wavelength so people can see that particular thing. There's some stories that you do that I just love. The overwhelming, like 98% of the stories that I do are stories that I myself like and I myself want to do because I just love. Many of those stories, they get iffy videos, whatever. And what I realized, you need to do videos for what you like, but also what audiences like. Because you need to be able to pull audiences. You need to get both. It's almost like you don't have a choice but to do both. Some people build their audience purely just doing stories that other people like. I think that is immensely boring. So I don't necessarily do that. I do the majority of my own stories. And at some point, I figure the audience will come. Stories like this with TYT tend to be pretty big only because TYT is massive. And so if I'm giddy, it's not because I'm like, oh, I'm excited that these guys are taking an L. Or I'm excited. Nothing to do with it. It's more so of, holy shit, this is going to be a big story, and holy shit, this is a big story, that these guys were part of this organization. They're stepping down, and is this an attack on the left or attack on TYT? So yeah, my giddiness had nothing to do with me being just happy with them or happy that it was failing. I don't think these guys failing, be it Jordan or TYT, is a great thing. You probably did say all that and then finish watching it. Well, thank you. I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt. Press 1 if you want to change, and God we trust to grab him by the pussy. Or this part one, improbable butts. Improbable butts. I'm an insomniac, but thanks, me too. I'm insomniac. But I am going to see my wife after a while. Will TYT even make the midterms the way they're imploding? I'm not convinced the candidates taking Justice Democrats' money should get a free pass either. Nobody should get a free pass, Bob. Like, I mean, what I mean by free pass, you should scrutinize everybody. Like, it's politics. Be cynical. Do you think YouTube pressure Cenk to resign? Oh, fuck no. No way. No way. No way. Most Shellix. I tend to agree with Sargon, but I get tired of listening to him. I've never listened to anything from Sargon. I'll check him out. I check out one of his vids. But, yeah, I'm about to end this. But I do think, to some degree, this is the left cannibalizing itself. I understand what the arguments against, but look, about my argument, be it Republicans, the Democrats, left, right, I don't care about the labels. I tend to like, what does it mean to be a person? And how do people behave? How do people behave to some degree is dependent upon the society that that person is in, meaning society conforms a person into around certain behavior patterns. And incrementally that behavior changes, being, less racist, more prone to cash, whatever, imploding or whatever. But from a human being standpoint, what does it mean to be able to express the things that you want to express? And, you get into these questions of what does it mean to be sexist? What does it mean to be racist? What does it mean to be whatever? There is gray area in these things. Meaning there's not hard and fixed. There is no definitive level or definitive place where a person puts their stake in the ground and say, right here, everything beyond this point. But lefties, honestly, lefties tend to do that. And that is a problem, and that is a pain in the ass. Let people say what they have to say, even if it rubs up against your sensibilities at times. That's my opinion on it. That's my position on it. It's not that I like some of the stuff. I'm not fascinated with Donald Trump saying Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. I fucking hate it. I don't like it at all. But by the same token, am I outraged by it? No. Do I want to get his ass out the office? Yes. Yes. I don't have to necessarily like something each and every person does. People are going to say and do things that I don't necessarily like. Does it raise to the level of offense? And you get into this question of what does it mean to be offensive? What does it mean to be sexist? What does it mean to be racist? Etc. 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 It seems that the left's cannibalizing itself. That's all. And it doesn't necessarily seem that these things blow up to the level of, oh my God, his career is ruined because he said something 18 years ago. Improbable buts. Chomsky Stewart, Cal shows his loyalty to Cenk. Cal shows his loyalty to Cenk in all sorts of ways. All sorts of ways. If you've noticed, Cal even does, like even in his mannerisms, like he likes the guy. I mean, that's what it is. Tabitha Enriquez, a 420 show. I was thinking about one, but I don't know if I'm going to pull off tonight. I wanted to do a Star Trek one. In fact, yeah, I may do a Star Trek one. Yeah, see my wife for a bit, but I may do a Star Trek one. 420 at 420. It's funny. Terry Robinson. Basically, we're all amazed at what we're witnessing as a nation. It's a bit of hysteria. Not often do we see powerful people panic about the wave, what others like them losing their heads. Sargon is a left centrist. Chauncey, yeah, I'm not a centrist at all. I'm far to the left on this one. I tend to be far to the left in a way that's... It's funny. I agree with libertarians, I think, on half that stuff. But I think what libertarians want, they can never accomplish in the way that they're trying to accomplish. Even to the point where he flips out on camera. That's funny. Sargon hugs Nazis. Oh God, that's going after him. Should Rachel Maddow resign after getting on Hillary crazy train? Rachel Maddow is not going anywhere. Rachel Maddow is bringing in tons of cash from a bunch of hillbots who wants her to come up one conspiracy theory or another after Donald Trump. What is a 420 show? Jamal get baked on the show. Skip Rock 420 show is Jamal somewhat get baked or inebriated in some way because Virginia is not necessarily allowed. Get baked in some way and have a show about something interesting and open-minded. That's what it is. It can be on everything from aliens to out-of-body experiences to abductions, lucid dreaming, reality, consciousness. It can be on anything. Doesn't matter what it is. Moke Shalix. Sargon supported Bernie Sanders and condemned the Democrats for cheating him. Tabitha Enriquez. Alien at Louise. If I do, I might want to do an alien one again because of the MSNBC thing. So yeah. Bob Ramirez. Health reminds me of the Voyager episode where Dr. Hologram was kidnapped and made to serve the alien hospital ship. Yeah. Yeah. FTW all day. Sargon is a right-wing hack. I can't support him or back him up because I don't know anything about him. Yeah. Alright, guys. My connection seems to be getting flaky. So, Jenny Land gave him a... I had too much church telling me how to talk, how to walk, and behave, how not to behave till now. Yeah. I kind of agree with you, Rebel. I don't like being policed. Like, don't get me wrong. I tend to be very aware of trying not to tread on what I think of other people's sensibilities. but their sensibilities have to some degree, be competent. I mean, there's always this thing between freedom and security. And this also goes down to speech. Me saying something is to some degree of freedom. How you receive it, and you, whether or not you want me to continue saying it, or whether or not you block me from saying it, to some degree inhibiting that particular freedom. Now, if somebody is being sexist and racist, then yeah, you can call it a freedom, but ultimately you're belittling somebody else. I would make the argument you're depriving somebody else of their freedom of existence. But come on, that's in ranges. That's in ranges. That's not absolute. Jamal, you should get the YouTuber Blonde in the Belly of the Beast on talk about Star Trek. She's right wing, but she's a total Star Trek nerd. Who is Blonde in the Belly of the Beast? That's a YouTuber? Blonde in the Belly of the Beast. I love that name. There's another guy, what is it, Star Trek lore, who's pretty cool. He's pretty badass. He's pretty badass. So yeah, Blonde in the Belly of the Beast is funny. Yeah, Rebel, man, I agree with you, man. It's a range. It's not a fixed quantity. Lefties need to stop with the shit that is a fixed quantity. Don't get me wrong. You've done a good thing. You've moved the debate farther to the left where people aren't bashing and all this other stuff. And at the very least, this stuff is even talked about. Like the fact that we're having this debate now on whether or not this is acceptable behavior is a change, and is a positive change. Beforehand, the debate was, is it okay to call this guy a nigger? I was like, can you imagine that's the debate? Having this debate about whether it's okay to rape your wife and shit like that. So yes, I'm perfectly okay with moving it on. GMO 40. You still think Dave Rubin is liberal? Fuck no. No, I don't know why Dave Rubin even calls himself a liberal. I think it's funny that he does. Free speech, yes, I agree with him to some degree on. I think the SJW thing goes a little too far. But it's necessary. That stuff is a struggle. It goes back and forth. It's not a fixed line. This stuff is somewhat gray. Dave Rubin is not a liberal. I don't care what Dave Rubin says. I don't care what he says. It's like he bounces and flips his language in a way to try to make himself liberal. And I don't understand why he feels like he needs to call himself that. Like he fights hard to call himself a liberal. And going so far as to say, none of these other bitches are liberal, but I'm liberal. I watched that show where he was talking about that and making his argument. And I thought to myself, dude, you in no way sounds this way, man. Come on. It's like, come on. Andrew Gomez, Jamal, Julian Assange's Twitter account was suspended. Thought, really? No fucking way. Seriously? Twitter shut down Julian Assange's account. I have to look it up. J. Scott, Dave Rubin is funny about it, right? We don't know that. I don't know that. I mean, Chomsky thinks so, not you, J. Oh yeah, I don't think he's liberal. No. Alright guys, I am going to end this. J. Scott, Rubin is not a liberal. No, he's not. He's not. He's what he calls himself. That video, that was a video that Rubin did. I was going to actually do a video response to it, but at that point, nobody knew who the fuck I was. He was like, why he left the left or something like that. You made that video. And he was talking about him being a liberal and everybody else not and all this other stuff. And he was making his argument as to why. And a lot of it boiled down to, I want to be able to say whatever I want to say and this type of stuff. They get it wrong. I mean, law, society, culture, all those things. When you're in politics, it behooves whoever takes power to understand that none of this stuff is real per se. What you want to accomplish is the thing that's real. The political apparatus is the tools that you have to try to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. That's it. People get in their heads that there's a fixed and definitive way to live and do things, and that fixed and definitive way is not real. It's just agreements that people make. Those agreements can and do change. They can and do change. It's the most aggravating thing in the world when people talk about this stuff as if these things are these fixed things. Things change. They can change. People just get so accustomed to a particular thing that they fight to hold on to something that may not necessarily be in their best interest. Meaning you have a 99% with a 1% that rapes the 99%, and you have a large faction of the 99% that will fight to their death to protect the fact that the 1% is raping them. It's like, come on. Fucking amazing. Yeah. Believing in gay marriage does not make you liberal. Well, no, he's gay. Of course, he's going to be for gay marriage. Conservatives always have this thing that they're perfectly okay with something that they themselves do. John McCain hates torture because John McCain was tortured. John McCain is also perfectly okay with bombing and murdering a lot of people abroad. Conservatives are not empathetic human beings. They're the opposite of it. They're empathetic when it's something that pertains to them because they're selfish fucks. He's the same way. He's gay, so he's okay with gay marriage. The other stuff, not so much. I just text is not suspended. The president of Ecuador said he can't interfere in Catalonia, Spain struggle anymore. He won't guarantee his safety. Oh, are you shitting me? That's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. No way. Oh, okay. You're saying they did suspend him. Okay. That would be amazing. I mean, Ecuador, embassy, you know, that type of thing. Yeah, that would be amazing. All right, I have to look that up, guys. I have to look that up. All right, guys. I appreciate all you guys coming. We had a huge audience tonight. And we've been going for like 2.5 hours. So, yeah, the page is going for like right long. Guys, I don't know how many people are still here. I don't know how many people are going to end up all the way going to this point, 2.5 hours. But whatever. I appreciate everybody who showed up. I appreciate everybody who's still here. I will try to have these shows more often if I think people enjoy them. And I will try to get it set at a specific time. One of the things my wife is like, she's like, I'm going to be your advertisement person. And we're going to market your show better and this and that and this and that. So I don't know what my wife is planning for next year on this front, but she's talking about taking over marketing. I don't know what that means. So we will see. But guys, I really do appreciate you guys showing up. I really do appreciate the super cash. And I am going to try to put this, and the patron, by the way, I'm going to try to do better with putting content or specific content on Patreon. I'm going to try to do better with organizing these so they show up at a particular time. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'll leave it at that. Guys, you have a Merry Christmas and enjoy your holidays. I don't know if I'm going to do a show tomorrow night. I may, probably not. But I'm not staying on for another hour. Hello, jerk. My wife was looking at one of my shows and she said, well, you said it would be quick. So the moment that you said it would be quick, I just left. And I was like, the show, and she says, I saw the thing. It went for like an hour, but you said 10 minutes in that you were going to be fast. You lied to me. Oh, Timothy Masson. Thanks, man. Love your channel. Thanks. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I do want to, Chauncey Stewart, let me tell you how much you've disappointed me this year. Oh, wow. That's intense. Go ahead, Chelsea. Speak your piece. I'm not going to police your speech. Speak your piece. Guys, if you've noticed, on this channel, I've tried to have, like, open dialogue. The reason why I engage my audience this way, some people only engage their audience when they're getting super cash. I was looking at Jimmy Dore's show, and he was, if you send him super cash, he'll open your chat. And I think I understand why. I think he's trying to push people to give super cash in this way to try to kind of, you know, the money for the show. So I understand it. I try to engage my audience a little bit more. I like the idea of dialogue, and I like the idea that the people are this kind of free-flowing conversation, as if a bunch of people are just sitting in a room talking to one another. I love it. What I may do next year is try to put in like a phone line or something so people can call in. You need bumper stickers, eat the rich. She's mentioned that, by the way. She's mentioned that. A Festivus tradition. Sanchi's like, yeah, I love that. I love that. Festivus. Oh, right, George Costanza. Festivus, let me tell you how much you've disappointed me this year. Yes. Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, Stephanie, I'm going to look up the Julian Assange thing. I'm going to see what's going on. But yeah, guys, you have a Merry Christmas. And look, I know some people get antsy with the Merry Christmas thing. Again, I think that's way too far. Let people speak their piece. Let people be who they are. They're going to be in their bubbles. They're going to do their thing. Those things are all relative to one another. Let them be the human beings. Let them be human beings. And yes, I'm probably going to do a end of the year show. But yeah, I do want to expand. So let me be clear. I do want to expand this channel. I do want to move into doing this channel a little bit more and having this channel take over at some point. Yeah, at some point. It's nowhere near there yet, but that is my goal. So trying to find ways to enhance the Patreon account, trying to find ways to enhance, I guess, the super cash thing will be probably what take place next year. But I appreciate all of you guys coming. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know who's still here after 2 hours and 30 minutes. But thanks, guys. I'm going to check on the Julian Assange thing, Stephanie, see what's going on. I may come back on to talk about it. So, you guys have a Merry fucking Christmas. Thanks, guys.